Here we go, y'all, live in the building. Your boy Stickity, I'm in the building. About to go on with this 420 party. I know y'all know 420 is coming up. Make sure my mic is right. Yeah, I'm good. All right, we on right now, man. So we about to go in. We streaming on 10 different sites right now. So I'm gonna be on my tablet a lot. Shouts to everybody that's been sharing the show too, man. That's much love for that. Showing love, sharing the show. That's what we need. We need a lot of people in here to see what we're trying to do right now, which is bring y'all the new age of hip hop and R&B. I'm the host, your boy Stickity o.stylez. We about to play a lot of underground artist music. I don't have the phone lines open today. I'm gonna keep them closed actually because we having a storm out here in Florida, and it's probably gonna interfere. So we also live on Facebook, which is like the main platform that I'm using right now, which is Facebook, but we are on 10 different sites. So Facebook likes to ban a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes they like to ban things. Shout out to my homie Danger in the building, man. Much love. He in the building early in the game. I'm in the chat room with y'all all night, man. Just know this. But like I said, I'm bouncing back and forth. So, chat with each other. I'm gonna be tagging all the artists and everything that I'm doing right now. So make sure y'all definitely follow these artists that I tag. Shouts to my homie Danger. URF is definitely in the building. And we about to do this Mark of the Beast drawing in a minute. I'm about to put this together, put this out. So I definitely want y'all to tune into the Mark of the Beast show. Got my man Danger, URF on it, and all my Underworld fam. And it's gonna be some politics, man. We're gonna talk a lot of shit, y'all. Oh, shout out to my homie Kayana in the building too as well. Much love to you, man. Coming through, hanging out. Like I said, for everybody out there, it's a share button down at the bottom. Shouts to you, brother. My man Danger. Make sure y'all click that share button throughout the show, man. Just keep sharing the show. We're gonna try to get a lot of people in because before I start doing this Mark of the Beast show, I really want people to start following the show so y'all can see what we trying to do, man. We promoting the underground, we promoting the streets. I got your new track up in rotation right now too, Danger. He definitely went hard with that traumatized joint. He got another joint out right now, Can't Lose. We're gonna have that on the show as well as UTB raps. We got my girl Kayana in the building right now. She been showing mad love to the underworld. Much love to her. And we're gonna just do it like that. So I don't want to talk too much. We're gonna get to the music, but I'm gonna keep popping up, chatting with y'all. Y'all just tune in. If you leave, come back and hang out. We're gonna be doing this for like a few hours, y'all, for real. And we're gonna just go heavy on them right now. So that's what we're doing right now. So new age of hip hop and R&B. Let's get to this music. Like I said, I'm in a bunch of chat rooms right now, so y'all can tune in on many different sites, man. Let's keep this shit going on, man. New age of hip hop.
I mean, obviously, the other niggas ain't know what they was doing, so I gotta take control of this. You did. Watch me work, though. Fuck your past, baby girl, I'ma give you the future. Them other niggas ain't know what to do, well, I'ma show them how to do, yeah. So you know what's real. You know what's real. Fuck your past, baby girl, I'ma give you the future. Them other niggas ain't know what to do, well, I'ma show them how to do, yeah. So you know what's real. You know what's real. Fuck your past, baby girl, I'ma give you the future. Them other niggas ain't know what to do, well, I'ma show them how to do, yeah. Foreplay, my tongue, it go crazy. We talk, no laziness between. Say she want me fast and I'ma give it to her. Beat that ass down, bend it into ya. But you know it's real. When we make love, you know what's the deal. Fuck your past, baby girl, I'ma give you the future. Them other niggas ain't know what to do, well, I'ma show them how to do, yeah. So you know what's real. You know what's real. Fuck your past, baby girl, I'ma give you the future. The mother niggas ain't know what to do, well, I'ma show them how to do, yeah. So you know it's real. You know it's real. Sexy as hell, I'ma give it to ya. She called me ugly, tell me she love my whole soul, what's to ya? Oh, she know it's real. She know, and she love the deal. Hard body, baby, I get used to. And I know you love me the way you supposed to, I do, yeah. Oh, I know just how you feel. Put it on your soul, and you know it's real. Fuck your past, baby girl, I'ma give you the future. The mother niggas ain't know what to do, well, I'ma show them how to do, yeah. So you know what's real. You know it's real. Fuck your past, baby girl, I'ma give you the future. The mother niggas ain't know what to do, well, I'ma show them how to do, yeah. So you know it's real. You know it's real.
Stepchild shit. Whoa.
Yeah, ooh, right back, 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 right back. Yeah, I was on my dick, I ain't like that. Yeah, now I'm on my shit, came right back. Yeah, young nigga rich down like that. Yeah, fucking nigga bitch, give it right back. Right back, 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 right back. Yeah, I was on my dick, I ain't like that. Yeah, now I'm on my shit, came right back. Yeah, young nigga rich down like that. Yeah, fucking nigga bitch, give it right back.
Yeah, fucking nigga big, give it right back. Don't text my phone, never right back. Yeah, spend a lot of money, get it right back. Yeah, ball so hard, need an ice pack. Yeah, dance on these niggas like Mike Jack. I threw it back, got it right back. I fucked your bitch on the flight back like, wait a minute, let me finish. Got you bitches kissing and they on a mission. Yeah, she went through my phone, now she tripping. Now that bitch won't even listen. Fuck that, gotta brush back. Oh, you got an attitude, get a bus pass. Hit these niggas talking money, where the funds at? Had to drop 2 hoes, got 'em right back. Fuck that.
Right back, 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 right back. Yeah, I was on my dick, I ain't like that. Yeah, now I'm on my shit, came right back. Yeah, young nigga rich down like that. Yeah, fucking nigga bitch, give it right back. Right back, 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 right back. Yeah, I was on my dick, I ain't like that. Yeah, now I'm on my shit, came right back. Yeah, young nigga rich down like that. Yeah, fucking nigga bitch, give it right back. Yeah, I was on my dick, I ain't like that. I ain't had shit, came right back. Fucking nigga bitch, give it right back. Now you hit her hard, she on right back. Whoa. Money calling, hit you right back. Spend it all at the mall, then I turn around, get it all right back. Right back, right back. I made it back like that. Yeah, shot it back through a bag. I ain't tripping, I'ma make it right back. Yeah, and she came right back to the pad, and you know I paid that. Yeah, throw that right back. Yeah, you know I like it like that. Yeah, right back, 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 right back. Yeah, I was on my dick, I ain't like that. Yeah, now I'm on my shit, came right back. Yeah, young nigga rich down like that. Yeah, fucking nigga bitch, give it right back. Right back, 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 right back. Yeah, I was on my dick, I ain't like that. Yeah, now I'm on my shit, came right back. Yeah, young nigga rich down like that. Yeah, fucking nigga bitch, give it right back.
Never sell my soul. I got my respect. I got birth control. You used to make my music for the strippers on the pole. You go ahead and hate them about to dig another hole. Everybody walking around with their chest on swole. Until I catch them slipping, sliding like an Eskimo. Pour me up a drink, I'm about to swing an episode. It's fucking with these Judases, but boy, you never know. Martin Little Mexico, they about to plug me up. Blue filter walking dead, now why they dug me up? Smoking one, while I'm rolling one, that's double dutch. Looking for a big old bubble butt. Double cup. Double cup. Yeah, I said it tastes like bubble gum. Burger said it'll hit your ass. It's like a sucker punch. Won't try to lie in front like you don't want you something. Popo knocking on my door like, what the fuck? It just me, myself, and I. Don't need nobody else. Coming down on 9, find me in my double cup. I don't ever leave home without my double cup. You looking for a double up and coming fuck with us. I got my double cup. 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 I got smoking super duper. Don't pass me no hookah. I got this here Ruger. Yeah, I bought it for intruders. I just came back from the future. Oh shit, now I'm Looper. Fuck you in your Uber. I'm the driver and the shooter. Pull up in the SUV or on the motor scooter. Unclogging the pipeline, call me Rotor Rooter. Sipping on Kahlua. Hate to do it to you. Treat you like a shish kebab and throw you on the skewer. Coming down on my high like a parachuter. Sarah Farrell got my out in Chattanooga. Fill me to the brim again in Boston, Massachusetts. Percocet and pool all the way down to Aruba. Drink myself into a stupor. Sure they ass is stupid. I'm in love with double cup like I got shot by Cupid. Double up your situation ain't really true to it. Double cup for everybody singing, no let's do it. It's just me, myself, and I. Don't need nobody else. Coming down on 9, find me in my double cup. I don't never leave home without my double cup. You looking for a double up and come and fuck with us. I got my double cup. 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 I got my double cup.
Love to live trife, get stabbed, jig with the knife. Kids is too hype, getting hit with double life. Act right, trap tight, night to night. Watch your back, it's on sight. Cats wanna blow your dynamite. Bomb shit, killed your mom shit. No movie script there in your jacuzzi, bitch. It's time for the hit. Heard you was snitch, looking for an easy flip. Grimy, slimy, sleazy kid. I heard you got gas, you keep them cocked back, but you never shot back. We know your kind, you was led by the blind. Can't see what's coming down the line. Till the nut bust down your face, now it's on your mind. No homo for sure though, you got violated from behind. Your kind is not tolerated, snitches get annihilated. Say the shit is overrated, grown to say the shit. Since you niggas scared to say it, Black Lives Matter, we gon' spray shit. Back in the day shit, when the world gets scary, go revolutionary. I am just that very, some versions may vary. Yo, I'm the same from January back to January. Breaking shackles like Mary, blowing Mary loud shit. Black and proud lit, old head, old school spit. Fuck with this my gift and I'm stuck with it. Got you niggas struggling, loving it, having bad luck with it. I beat the box, fucking it, smoke to this, high.
To all my people in the struggle, To all my people dead and gone, To all my people in the hood, Yeah, feel me on this. When the clouds peel away and reveal what's above, will my Father have mercy and embrace me with his love? With the sins of a thug and the story of a soldier, it made me when I am, I wouldn't do a thing over. See, I know the tribulation, the turbulence, the shaking on this flight called life. Hold on and be patient. At times I think I'm breaking so weak, like the end is near, but that's a new beginning. When I see I never had no fear, tears on my sleeves dried up, it's a drought now. Third straight now, my man ain't never coming out now. Flowers on a palm box, candles in the window. My thoughts strip, I meditate while blowing on the endo. It used to be simple, like the keys on the piano. Everything done in black and white, but when you change that channel and get a clear picture through the eyes of the surface, you start to understand on the path of your purpose. See, I move by faith and not by sight. Spread my wings and I fly to whole new heights. I can change my past and change my life. Where I'm from, you're here today and going by night. See, I move by faith and not by sight. Spread my wings and I fly to whole new heights. I can't change my past or change my life. Where I'm from, you're here today and going by night. You're here to sirens every evening, feeling half dead breathing. Cause you can meet your maker if you hesitate on squeezing. The climate is freezing, our hearts getting colder. Brothers dying early, ain't no soldiers getting older. Who's carrying the torch or passing down the jewels? See, we was getting money, we ain't barely go to school. But then came the cases, then came the felonies. 48 niggas break, then they start to tell on me. Choices on the table, left or you can make it right. I'ma take my shot if I get my enemy in sight. Right, spilling blood in the streets as a preacher. I congregate with these, testifying through your speaker. See, I know death a little more than the next. Lost my man, now I'm trying to fight a beat inside my chest. Stress when I see his son, how can I explain it? And when I see God, well, he say my soul is tainted. See, I move by faith and not by sight. Spread my wings and I fly to whole new heights. I can't change my past or change my life. Where I'm from, you're here today and going by night. See, I move by faith and not by sight. Spread my wings and I fly to whole new heights. I can't change my past or change my life. Where I'm from, you're here today and going by night. You see, I can barely sleep up at night, just plan to wake up early morning. Always keep a loaded cannon in the land so forsaken. Always battling with Satan. Tomorrow isn't promised. See, I'm really not for waiting. Taking what I know is mine. Everything will come in time. Blood on my uniform. I'm out here on the front line. I dedicate this moment to the lost and the forgotten. In the youth in the streets, just surviving, living rotten, catching early felonies, caught up in the cycle. Time flies. Remember, we was listening to Michael. Life is like a thriller. Judge the man in the mirror. See the light getting closer. Now the picture's getting clearer. Tone, man, I hear you when you whisper in the midnight. Earth's angel in black. I spread my wings and take flight. Drifting on your memory, shining down from up above. You'll be in my heart till my death, so just spreading love. Yeah, move by faith and not by sight. Spread my wings and I fly to whole new heights. I can't change my past or change my life. Where I'm from, you're here today and going by night. See, I move by faith and not by sight. Spread my wings and I fly to whole new heights. I can't change my past or change my life. Where I'm from, you're here today and going
some trap, you know, some real trap shit. The true trap shit. Story that tell. I grew up in them streets. I got a story to tell. I seen the man take two to the head for talking to them feds. Point blank, no infrared. That brother dead. I seen the motorcycle crash. Head smash like half smash right in front of the terminal. Where his head go, can't determine no. Yes, I seen that. As a young kid, I seen some niggas got these crack fiends jumping in the ring with the pit bulls. For a couple beans, nigga bit the pit bull. Something pitiful, rocks by the fistful. Since some sick dudes pistol whip they chick, cause the bread do. Peep my mental. It's the 90s, brick city.
Live in the building, y'all. Underworld Radio. Going in, click them like and share buttons, y'all. This how we do, man. Underworld music, Underworld Radio. We in the building, y'all. Phone line's not open right now, but we gonna get it poppin', y'all. Spark something. Let's go.
R.I.P. Tariq, New Jersey Drive. Had the whole hood live. Niggas couldn't drive, die. Only the best survives. Real shit. A lot of niggas got their wigs split. Trying to steal a real nigga whip. Clock, burst, black, hearse, hood, hurt. Cause a nigga put in work. Hand to hand, hustle, ATF, bust you locked down. Month for two, not comfortable. On site, suckers might come for you. Literally, I seen niggas go when gangsters coming out spiritually. Shit happen, shit I'm just rapping. Old head captain, closed caption. This is how I'm clapping, what I'm supposed to do. Tell my story, testimony. Shouts to my fallen homies and the ones vouching for me. These new niggas really bore me. This is new history, not for glory. Sick shit, street sickness, wickedness, sick of this. Kids dying every day, be the hood is crazy. Like fuck you paid me, why you trying to play me? Lazy, puffin' purple hazy. OG, Kevin Spacey, I never moved the good Lord place me. Every time I touch down, the hood embrace me. R.I.P. Miss Tracy, her little baby Stacy. Burnt in the fire where they stayed sleep. Cops shot the little brother Rich. He was a kid, he ain't even do shit. And I never forgot that shit, screaming fuck the police. Mark of the beast, no justice.
Growing outrage tonight after an unarmed African-American teenager was shot and killed by police in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson, Missouri. New tonight, a deadly shooting in Sanford. Police
Homie in America.
the shooter. They have not arrested him. And as Fox 35 Steve Landry tells us, the dead man's grieving family wants to know why.
Strange things that happen when I'm strange.
people, so y'all don't care enough. Hands up, don't shoot. Blood in them leaves, blood at the roots. Hands up, don't shoot. Blood in them leaves, blood at the roots. This is a strange fruit, an arranged fruit. I never seen the fruit with shoes on the feet, nope. You see defeated, okay, I see a reason, Birth of a nation in, part 2 is needed, yes. Eric Garner, Sean Bell, Sandra Bland. Somebody help me try to understand. Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray. Cops killed another one of us and got away. Why? But only in America. It's not one of y'all people, so y'all don't care enough. Hands up, don't shoot. Blood in them leaves, blood at the roots. Black body swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging in them bloody trees. Us versus them versus us. One nation under God, so we trust.
Strange things would happen, ain't no stranger would if we met at
only in America. It's not one of y'all people, so y'all don't care enough. Hands up, don't shoot. Blood in them leaves, blood at the roots. Hands up, don't shoot. Blood in them leaves, blood at the roots. The smell of burning flesh, shots to the chest. Yes, same pattern, nothing changed, they belittle us. We used to march for the movement and dreams. Okay, now we marching for some likes and some memes. Reality's an app that you can download for free. Social media, these illusions. I'm asking my people, what are we doing? Y'all think y'all winning, in reality we losing. Unconsciously, these energies are steady moving. But we so caught up in confusion. Blinded by distractions, we don't see the shit they doing. Plus, half of these rappers are rappers with no influence. They don't give a fuck, we on a crash course. As long as we buy the album and we show support. Remember where you came from and don't forget the poor. The same way you got your riches, you can lose it all.
strange things that happen, ain't no stranger would if we met at
Only in America. It's not one of y'all people, so y'all don't care enough. Hands up, don't shoot. Blood in them leaves, blood at the roots. Hands up, don't shoot.
Issues, man, I got issues, man, I got issues. With all this competition around, man, I got issues. I find it hard to hold it down, man, I got issues. But when your family's not around, man, I got issues. To overcome this, stand your ground, man, I got issues.
Grandma,
Man, I got
Pops,
issues.
this for y'all.
Man, I got issues.
Told you I was going up, straight to the top. Let's go. Mark of a king, I was told I was destined to rise. I told my pops don't go, I seen death in his eyes. Bigger problems, bigger issues make it hard to decide. You let it build until it fill or you erupt inside. Either the problems get bigger or you drink and you drive. 6 shots to spin the barrel, guess I'm wanting to die. The burden on my back is bigger than what I'm feeling inside. Won't tell myself the truth, so I'm believing the lie.
Man, I got issues. With all this competition around, man, I got issues. I find it hard to hold it down, man, I got issues. When your family's not around, man, I got issues. To overcome this, stand your ground, man, I got issues. Man, I got issues. Man, I got issues. Man, I got issues.
Love.
Man, I got issues. Man, I got issues.
Left for dead to put thoughts in your head. Could've been weak. I watch the streets and make competition instead. Knowledge I never lack when you constantly fed. Snakes always get caught cause they constantly shed. The real nigga not gon' bitch if he making his bed. The real nigga not gon' snitch if he know what he did. Weak niggas is small talk. A man live how we live. Raised by grandmas and pops, so it's hard for the kid. Turn boys to men, now I see what you did. And since both of you gone, I'ma have to finish the trend. I gotta stay strong, even though I'm dying within. Pause, I can't pause with so much on the fence. I gave my word to big stage. Pop, let's make this dent. The time we now losing is gone. That's the time I'm missing we spent. I'm sick, I feel like I hit with a brick. And since I can't say it to you, this my time to vent. No more jail, no more pain. New life is what you gain. The legend deserve fame. The world you bought changed. The reason is for my name. This leather is straight to heaven and it's already sent.
Man, I got issues. With all this competition around, man, I got issues. I find it hard to hold it down, man, I got issues. But when your family's not around, man, I got issues. To overcome this, stand your ground, man, I got issues. Man, I got issues. Man, I got issues.
TV and radio. Some going platinum, some going gold. I don't know who they know, but it's suspect. I make hits, man, why I need a mixtape? Kinda great when you keep putting fire out. I'm the only person that can put my fire out. We fired up, somebody call the firehouse. When I rap, man, people say quiet down. Law come to town, they shut down the airport. The way we move make them wonder why we there for. Pharaoh goblins on my face cost 2 bands. Hop in sedans not made on this land. Nah, them the foreign joints. I got a plan all mapped out ready for me. I produce a whole gang of dudes to do their numbers. Every summer we chillin' with the pretty women. Got my brother on live showing how we living. Life in every day already automatic. We in the fly whips, double park with the hazards. It get graphic when I speak about my real life. Freestyle like a mixtape on site. Whack rappers on the TV and radio. Some going platinum, some going gold. I don't know who they know, but it's suspect. I make hits, man, why I need a mixtape? We deserve non-stop on the radio. I spit a verse and they say I really brought it home. I'm in the club on the phone with the club owner. He say he paid me a little extra if I stay longer. Sip capacity of law still showing up. I'm sipping off 2 bottles, 1 cup. Didn't know I could make all this in one night. We stepping out the club when it's light outside. Early morning ventures. Customized van rolling like grandma. Lifestyle get publicized by B-Star. FBI taking pictures like the paparazzi. Bronx Club, well, we meet about in Spanish Harlem. Causing carnage in the hood like a mad villain. But that's the roundabout me there, say your boy chillin'. Spilling liquor on kicks that cost a couple $100. On YouTube stuntin', but a brother won it. Whack rappers on the TV and radio. Some going platinum, some going gold. I don't know who they know, but it's suspect. I make hits, man, why I need a mixtape?
Pulling pieces out the sky, pull a scene from out my mind. Pulling pieces out the sky, pull a scene from out my mind. I'm just living that life though. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. I lock and loaded my revival. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. Just living that life though. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. I lock and loaded my revival. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. I start pulling pieces out the sky, pull a scene from out my mind. Get crazy, Scorsese, John Singleton, and Hughes brothers for my line. Roll a Spike Lee joint, about to make a movie, show you how the world truly a pile of poverty. Pour the pottery, a melting pot to be destroy the confusion. Action, shoot red dot for recording, now that dot for the target block. Hit him up, numerous shots with the fofo, it's going down. Down on how the homies trained us, down on luck, down on paper, down state, down on haters. Living the way that they say, grandma, mine never raised us, we just living that life though. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. I lock and loaded my revival. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. Just living that life though. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. I lock and loaded my revival. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. Out tears in the jungle, see you alive as soon as your pride making an absence. In a rock in a hard place where my family raised me. I grew with the gap is, I grew with the back is. Your lifestyle bringing the package, personality in your fabric. Matter over mind, never mind if you got mind enough to maintain a ration. Made a madness, the lifestyle made me grab it. Perspire your pain and passion, aspiring, I'm past it. I am the dream you napping. That's cause they made my checks up and away, get at it. Bottom to the top, nigga, basement addict. All I wanna do is rock, nigga, basement addicts. All they wanna do is stop. What? My pace to have it, from silver to plastic on spoon. Soon as my habitat mode, from suburb to city, the pity, the poverty. I just adapted the show to the stars and the moon till I'm all in that. Dollar for the Lord, he ain't calling back. All I wanna do is write, what's wrong with that? So I'm marching on with our target on the Mark 50 song. Just living that life though, living that life though. Can turn you upon or string you along. The chain of the psycho. Hope you think of what I know. Taking a stride though, and pray with your Bible. This world is taking a dive. He's taking a ride to make it alive. To say that it's fine, cause we just living that life though. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. I lock and loaded my revival. I can keep ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. Just living that life, though. Like a key, ballin', chain, psycho. Better know it, nigga, better know it. I lock and load it.
Danger. We'll take the mask off for this one. It all started like what you wanna be when you grow up. That put a target on me. I should've kept my mouth shut. To know your dreams and aspirations, get them a one up. To meet you at the crossroads, they playing this out from the jump. Stock market, your social, that red ink is your banking number. To cash out is to be put behind doors and taking lumber. Working for them or thrown in prison where we mistake each other as inferior. While they hope and pray that we shake each other. The borders on our back, all we gotta do is stand up. Economic slavery put us in debt with our hands cuffed. Though I still became what I raised my hand for. It's trauma on my mental and the fight gon' be lifelong.
This is that hip hop that you blast. That shit you bang in your ear will make you cut it off.
Look at how I move. I'm traumatized. Look at how I act around you. I'm traumatized. Coming up, I always looked at family as superheroes. The blood that we shed is what helped us recoup from zero. My mother said when I pass on, stay close with your brothers. Keep it love, no sibling rivalry, trying to hurt each other. But soon out of sight, out of mind, had took its toll. I turned a blind eye to certain addictions. When it's cold, it cuts straight to the bone. In the process, you lose your soul, leaving invisible tears on a face that's growing old. To me, life as I knew it came to a standstill. I feel like a clean shirt that got thrown in the landfill. Though I still became what I raised my hand for. It's trauma on my mental and the fight gon' be lifelong. Look into my mind. I'm traumatized. Look into my home. I'm traumatized. Look at how I move. Look at how I act around you. I'm traumatized. Underworld.
That little shit ain't offending me. I don't care about no enemy. Don't act like you can. And I swear you no friend of me. Street come with a penalty. You nigga don't fuck with me. You didn't come up with me. So just keep that same energy. Just keep that same energy. This shit ain't offending me. I don't care about no enemy. Don't act like you can. Just keep that same energy. I'm lit in this bitch. Go off. Shoot at the whip, knock the door off. Pick up my feet, take a load off. Then I pick up my phone, get a bow off. Yeah, designing my fabric now. Hit the bar and we cashing out. That little bitch we didn't have a while. Yeah, you fuck with her, hand me down. Yeah, sauce ragu, set brand new, step man new. Now I'm under they skin tattoo. The shit past due is my rear view. Hey, what's up with the attitude? All this is factual. I'm doing what you didn't have to do. You didn't fuck with the dude, I wasn't seeing you. Didn't give a fuck about seeing you. She didn't call me back then, I was bust. Now they see me in public and rush me. But now my heart cold as a slush. And I'm loud in this bitch, you can't hush me. Yeah. Now they ride me like a saddle. Up in it, bitch, check the ladder. Yeah, swear the boy pockets got fatter. I'm up. And don't fuck with me now. That little shit ain't offending me. I don't care about no enemy. Don't act like you can.
And I swear you no friend of me. Street come with a pen. You nigga don't fuck with me. You didn't come up with me. So just keep that same energy. 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 This shit ain't offending me. I don't care about no winning. Don't act like you can't. Hey, just keep that same energy. I don't care about the hawk, cause we strapped in this bitch. Please don't get whacked in this bitch. Falling deep at the club, just to pop up some bottles and leave out the back of this bitch. I'm on purchase some Zan, just smoking on gas. I'm way too relaxing this bitch. Fuck that hoe, can't keep track of that bitch. Man, I'm texting that bitch, then I'm passing that bitch. Yeah, you can have. I swear I wasn't having shit, now I'm demanding shit. Go to the mall, get the man. Get my load up in packages, cut out my cabbages. I need it off of my sanity. They behave for no reason, raw with no season. I need to charge them with trees. I'm a king, call me Steven. Bitch, kiss my semen. I had to bless her like this. City, what you up to? Nigga know what fuck you. You ain't been around, can't trust you. Pocket swole like a buff dude. You need to reroute. I'm in my bag, no recruit. Just keep that same energy. I wasn't the topic. I'm in the trap and I'm counting out the profit. Keep that same energy. I wasn't the topic. I'm in the trap and I'm counting out the profit. This shit ain't offending me. I don't care about no enemy. Don't act like you can't. And I swear you no friend of me. Street come with a pen. You nigga don't fuck with me. You didn't come up with me. So just keep that same energy. 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 This shit ain't offending me. I don't care about no winning. Don't act like you can't. Hey, just keep that same energy.
Banger.
Way you changed the game up. Please excuse my ways, it's just the way that I came up. Can't change us. Y'all still on the same stuff. Get your change up before you try to claim us a banger.
Real rap. Yo, I still trap. That's a fact, not an act. Like these niggas do on tracks. I'm from the way back. I still am say, MCs is whack. Fuck a plaque. I should have a plaque. Build up. Way I use this music just to build up. Got my skills up. Pay these bills up. Big up to all my underworld niggas. Yo, we are the sound of the underground. I pound the ground, shake everything around, create a thunder sound. If you wonder how I keep real ones around, I don't fuck with clowns or bust downs. I rep the bricks. That's why I take a brick, a pound, and bust it down, then make my rounds. Fuck my money, bust some rounds. Please excuse me.
See, what is your problem, my nigga? You know what the difference is. I bring the back to the table, that bread you will think that I'm making some sandwiches. All that you do is just say you gon' do it. That bullshit you foolish up in the head. If I send all of my niggas to get you, your block will be hot like the tanning bed. All of that nonsense is in your head. You run your mouth cause you with the feds. If you get caught, you gon' need your meds. Here we gon' catch you while you in bed. We in your room with a bunch of shooters, so we'll look like Insidious when you dead. Hunted by demons, don't fuck around. Bring your body as soon as we cut your leg. Bitches are liars, but numbers don't lie, so I'm all about my money. You must be stupid if you think you with me. No, I'm not a dummy. Niggas is sick when they smell what I'm cooking. They nose won't be running. Used to be broke as a joke. When you check the punchline, ain't gon' be nothing funny. You could all say what you want, but only God can judge me. Difficult, catch me a body. I wonder if God will love me. Money the root of all evil, so niggas bow the money. Whole lot of bricks on the table when we break it down.
When I'm writing, I'm in my prime, and I'm always on set. A bad bitch, she a dime, but I put that on my set. That's the 5 in the line. I put my green jacket on. Now it's time to go grind. All I need is the code, the location of the crime. Knife in your stomach, different location of my 9. And the pain I'm gonna give is a pain you can't define. Have you regret in your life? Trying to put it in rewind. I had you looking to the sky, yelling, God, give me a sign. Make trends like I'm ancient. Old trees creating vines. What I mean is I'ma eat, succeed at any time. Dig the dirt you under the world, in the world they can't find.
They calling me cold-hearted. Maybe I'm cold-hearted. They calling me cold-hearted. Maybe I'm
catch you slipping like Ricky. Sawed off double barrel, big shells hit the bone in. You can see the marrow cold-hearted on the throne, but you can see a feral 4-5 all chrome breeze. And I don't deal with a saint, but you can't play in my dome. I'm Gucci, you not Gucci, I don't deal with clones. And I don't take no disrespect, that's invasion of homes. 100 boys, my suggestion is you sleep alone. And there's no negotiation, so don't answer the phone. Guilty by association, you get charged alone. I keep shooting your head until your brains is gone. Snakes can't live in my grass, I just cut the lawn. And I'm a don, I can't eat, you can't eat, all this eat off my palm. Southpaw, Northpaw, I keep changing my phone. Strong arm, get strong arm, without lifting my arm. I'm a don, play your pawn, or you can play like a pawn. They calling me cold-hearted. Maybe I'm cold-hearted. They calling me cold-hearted. Maybe I'm cold-hearted. Hard work pays off, I gotta get it, I'm in my prime. You get in my way and catch this nickel, then it's dime. I treat your body like a love seat, the pistol make it recline. It's been a long time coming, niggas wasting my time. I came back with more force, made niggas resign. Niggas back and you was pussy, I gave niggas the spine. Now you wanna disrespect, I'm raging to get mine. Make sure the bullets come in 3, shoot amazing from the line. Give you 5, there's no grazing, I always cross the line, easy one. Why you don't believe me, son? I'll beat you with my hands and I don't even need the gun. You know what it is, my hunters, they don't need to come. I get the weaving and leaning when I'm squeezing the gun. You was think you was dreaming from the slow breathing, the wheezing. You trying to run, no agreement, no disagreement. Believe me, I'm squeezing one. My suggestion is get protection, everyone needs to come. They calling me cold-hearted. Maybe I'm cold-hearted. They calling me cold-hearted. Maybe I'm cold-hearted.
Bang it in your home, bang it in your car, bang it in your car, bang it with your squad, we go on. I will bang for my culture, o.stylez, yo, I'm fly as a vulture, the model for this culture. I'm in my bag, check the flow, original, you ain't even know, cause you got this too slow, like in slow-mo.
Hold on, y'all. We going so hard right now for all of y'all out there that's tuning in. I know tomorrow's 420, and since it's gonna be 420, my daughters will be here, so I'm not gonna be able to really do a show or do it like that. So that's why I'm doing the 420 show right now today. So for all of y'all out there that's tuning in, that's hanging out with me, much love to y'all. I'm so glad to see y'all coming through. I see a lot of people hanging out in the building with us in the underworld. Shout out to Crisis. Shout out to Ron Morris, Danger, Kate Keani. Shouts to you, Miss Keani Fells. Man, shouts to all of y'all, man. A lot of people hanging out with us, and we got to keep it going like that. Just a new age of hip-hop and R&B. We got a lot of new artists that we doing right now. Y'all let me know if I sound good out there, man. But I'm definitely trying to do this up for y'all. We got the Mark of the Beast show coming very soon. In a minute, we're going to definitely put that on blast. We're going to talk about some police violence, police brutality in the hood. Like I said, man, we're going very heavy this semester. I just played that new Danger Traumatized John too. Make sure y'all look up that. What's the new video he got out right now? Damn, I just lost my homies, John. Hold on. Because I got my homies in the chat room so they can let me know. It's lost something. Danger, you in the chat room. Let me know what the name of your new video is, man. But that's what we doing right now. For all y'all that's in the chat room, please continue to like and share the show. Like and share the show. Like and share the show. And follow the show. UTB station on many different sites. Like I said, right now we on 10 different sites, y'all. If you go on YouTube right now, we live on YouTube. If you go on Periscope right now, we live on Periscope, Twitch. OK is a whole Russian site. You feel what I'm saying? It's nothing but people not from America on this site, and I got the American page on it, and we on there too. So for all y'all artists out there, man, y'all are getting promoted. Oh yeah, it's Can't Lose. How the fuck I forget that shit, man? Shouts to Danger in the chat room, man. The new video is Can't Lose by Danger Danger and the URF fan. Go on YouTube, look that up. For all of y'all that's watching the replay of this, the recording of it, make sure you still like and share the show. Tune into the show whenever we live with UTV Raps. And we're going to get back into this music, man. Hopefully y'all are definitely enjoying the show. We just going to keep banging on them like that, man. So shout out to my homie Ty Guns, too, man. He definitely going hard for the underworld. It's one of my other artists, man. Let's get into it, y'all.
Easy production.
Ty Guns. Let me just show you how I fuck the trap up. Selling the dope, nigga, all the crack. Selling the coke, baby, other Zans. Baby girl, I can pull it on your mans. If I just fly right to the yams. No lights, need to know my diamonds dance. Yeah, I just trap out of phones all day and night. Young and running up these bands. Lifestyle should be on demand. Run every time D's don't get a chance. Hitting my phone cause I got it low. Nigga got a trap, yeah, I gotta go. Street shit, oh, that a nigga know. Keep my heat in case I gotta blow. I ain't no killer nigga, but don't push me. Changing the game even as a rookie. Fucking your bitch, yeah, her pussy gushy. Getting her more wetter than she should be. But I'm a trapaholic, calling me a menace. Fucking call it what you call it. Me in the hat, Liddy in the office. Big body bench, couldn't even park it. Clothes that I wear, not up in the market. I box a stool, got a nigga coughing. But I'm a trapaholic. Nigga getting money, getting to these bands. I'm a trap regardless. RP Weber, free clay guns. I'm a rap regardless. Every beat I'm gon' cook it up. Niggas knowin' I'm the hardest. Painting pictures like an artist. I'm a trapaholic. Nigga getting money, getting to these bands. I'm a trap regardless. RP Weber, free clay guns. I'm a rap regardless. Every beat I'm gon' cook it up. Niggas knowin' I'm the hardest. Painting pictures like an artist. Talking about beef, you pussy niggas better part of my way. Before a nigga get shot in the face, don't make me hit the fucking highway today. Bitch nigga, I'll ride on you niggas. Come outside, I'll slide on you niggas. Make your mama say goodbye to you niggas. Chop a fly, send a hollow some niggas. Young nigga that's just filled up with pain. Cut different, we ain't grow up the same. 14 in the basement with gang. Grinding hard so the life I could change. Want the money, I don't really do fame. Crossing once and I blow out your brain. Whole world about to know my damn name. Styling hard, about to cop me a chain. About to put mama right in the range. Until then, I'ma trap with the gang. Trap with the gang.
They tried to survive and tried to make it home. Tell me why they had to die, cause they didn't make it home.
Let's go! Didn't have to die that way. Like a movie night turned dark night to a real deadly night.
Yo, this rhyme for my man J-Von. Cried over Trayvon, survived Columbine. I put his story in the scribe. Love life, to live life. Life is all you have. Yes. Reach out and take a grab for these haters. Take a stab in the barrel with the crabs. Can't get out like my man J-Von stressed out. Moms kicked him out till he got a real job. He used to smoke crack, still and rob. On his knees he would pray inside the God that he stopped. Month later got a job at a pizza shop. Called the scrub cause he pushed the mop. Didn't make a lot, felt like he was on a rise to the top. Can't stop a grown ass man. It's payday, cash in hand. Took his son to see the new Batman. Did I forget he's a Coloradian? I think you know how the story ends. Make my head spin. Why do we die before life begins? When we transcend, we family and friends. That's why I follow God and not trends. Don't break a bend when I die and my soul leaves my skin. Like,
tell me why they had to die, cause they didn't make it home. Now their families cry, cause they didn't make it home. Yeah, they tried to survive and tried to make it home. Tell me why they had to die, cause they didn't make it home.
Didn't have to die that way. Why do the young and the restless hurt others young and defenseless?
16 years, avoiding the pressure from his peers. Just smoking, guzzle some beers. Partying and wild sex, hanging out with wild sex. Avoiding fights by treating bullies as if they're idle threats. Doing night, he got a knock upon his window pane. I'm a boy that introduced him to a girl by the name of Mary Jane. Figuring he was a cool cat, her curiosity couldn't kill. He carelessly caved in and unconsciously changed and killed his will. To survive, dying to stay alive. Searching for the lows in his life just to get high. Though he's not an addict and smoking became a habit. Out of sight, out of mind. But when he saw that he had to grab it, till one day it got tragic and took a different angle. He was given the blunt with the dust of a little angel. It's already sad because the little homie OD. But what makes it bad is that this blunt was from his code D.
He didn't have to die that way. In the fast lane, chasing highs, life racing by. Better get it right.
Running things and he fell crippled in the joint like a cell sickle.
Holy water in a well ripple may have helped that length. What good was money, power, respect when he didn't have life, health, and strength? Off-white room strapped in tubes, body withering. Thoughts of how he used to get it in maroons and cinnamon. And even loosen women, boosting him with juice and gin and in a loosen the genocidal sin he was living in. Priest preaching Jesus, then he asked if he forgive him, and if he could get him in when the sign was up to live again. Apology accepted, but the God family stone the game slide, man. The long quality time gotta be collected, and the flash time rewinds back through the lifetime lines, and the lines flat. Carried out his life preferences, trying to find hope in these killer verses filled with life sentences.
I mean, why they had to die? Cause they didn't make it home. Now their families cry, cause they didn't make it home. Yeah, they tried to survive and tried to make it home. Tell me why they had to die, cause they didn't make it home.
Stress to relieve their pain, but they go a lot quicker than they originally came. Pour out a little liquor for my brothers and my sisters that's gone. They may be gone from the earth, but your soul is on. As for the rest of the fam, we miss you undone. And we know Jarrell and Aunt Marguerite is up there carrying on. But we stay strong for what it was worth. Grandma got her weekdays, Sundays at church. Losing you was worse than a chop to the throat. You taught me success and to never lose hope. You inspired people with the things that you spoke. Your life is like a movie that's supposed to be wrote. You know pop breaking rules that ain't supposed to be broke. You know I've been through pain and my heart's been broken, but my family keep me from things that hurt. I look to the sky and I look for the star that's yours, and then I close my eyes and smirk and sing.
They didn't have to die that way. Numbing senses, trying to make sense of something that's senseless.
I mean, why they had to die? Cause they didn't make it home. Now their families cry, cause they didn't make it home. Yeah, they tried to survive and tried to make it home. Tell me why they had to die, cause they didn't make it.
But I ain't slipping, these niggas tripping.
We going all the way out to the FLA. My man Endel. Shouts to Endel TPG. Let's go. Lights up, man. Sparks up.
I'm pistol gripping. Lil' mama keep her hands out, but I ain't tipping. I'm a G, I ain't blood, I ain't crippin'. These niggas be trippin'. I'm pistol gripping. This thug life a nigga like me live it. Hoes down, G's up, that's what I scream out. I'm a nigga putting down for the dirty south. What the fuck you talking about? Bitch, you wanna see me fall? You got me fucked up, keep my back against the wall. Nuts hang low to the motherfucking flow. Who it is, that nigga coming through this bitch is Endo. Putting it down every time you see me, boy, I'm clean. You can catch a nigga like me up on the scene with my team, know what I mean? Standing tall like Yao Ming. Fuck you niggas talking about, bitch, I ain't green, I'm about my green, nigga. And I'm on a mission daily. It's a must these motherfucking streets pay me. How the fuck you think I'm gonna let these niggas face me? You crazy, man, fuck that shit, that's not your lady. Yeah, I be sliding, but I ain't slipping. These niggas tripping, I'm pistol gripping. Lil' mama keep her hands out, but I ain't tipping. I'm a G, I ain't blood, I ain't crippin'. Yeah, I be sliding, but I ain't slipping. These niggas tripping, I'm pistol gripping. Lil' mama keep her hands out, but I ain't tipping. I'm a G, I ain't blood, I ain't crippin'.
Your boy, Smash. Welcome to Energy and Vibration.
She know I love her like she loving me. She know I miss her like she missing me. The way we love is uncontrollably. We overthinking love through energy. 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 Them vibrations that you bring to me. She know I love her like she loving me. She loving me. She know I miss her like she missing me. She missing me. The way we love is uncontrollably. We overthinking love through energy. 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 The vibrations that you bring to me, you bring to me. I feelin' what we feelin' for. I'm reaching up for a star, sitting on the moon, looking over the Pluto. That's where you go. But baby, let me tell you something. No reason fake, no reason front. All I want is keep it 100. I love her like she love me and she want it. She know I love her like she loving me. She loving me. She know I'm missing like she missing me. She missing me. The way we love is uncontrollably. We overthinking love through energy. 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 The vibrations that you bring to me, you bring to me. She know I love her like she loving me. Right by my side is where she wants to be. Don't make me look or baby, take a peek. Just guarantee you won't wanna see. Everything I got is waiting for. I got for you, baby, I'll give you more. And anything you want, I'll break it off. Half and never take a loss. We play a team and that's on everything. You know whatever, I'll forever bring. I get that money, I'll forever save. We love each other and it stays the same. Now tell me what's the game? Never hurt you, never bring you pain. She know I love her like she loving me. She know I miss her like she missing me. The way we love is uncontrollably. We overthinking love through energy. 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 Them vibrations that you bring to me. She know I love her like she loving me. She know I'm missing like she missing me. The way we love is uncontrollably. We overthinking love through.
Yo, this your boy Wafu Malik Star. I'm chilling in the underworld with your boy o.stylez. You know what I'm saying? Where the heat comes from. Y'all need to get up on this. Y'all need to be down with the underworld team. Join the movement. Let's go.
Get 'em! This your boy Mac reppin' 304 Dub V, baby. Get 'em squad, GS all day. And when I want to listen to real hip hop, I tune into Underworld Radio and hang out with my boy o.stylez, the JFK and Jers, and all my Law fans. Get 'em!
Yeah, what's good, man? It's D.R. Reader, Realist MC, CEO of the Real Entertainment. Shout it out to my man, o.stylez, the underground pioneer. Holding it down for Underworld and Underground EMC for this one day.
Yo, it's your dude, Crisis. Giving much love, much respect, and much love to my bro, the pioneer. Beginning and where it's ending.
Money look like it's on the comeback. Mama's doing better, got an appetite back. I'll be sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak. Keep up with the times, days used to be long. Yeah. Studio recording the same song. I'll be sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak. Got me out of character, girl, you're powerful. Feeling things that I never felt before. I'll be sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak.
Yeah, yeah, you know me. Dre be low key. Got yak on me, got pack on me. Spark the street, please. Your life's a blessing. Live, learn lessons. Pain and affection. Sip when we happy, we sip when we stressing. Mine's in detention. Stuck with this, blunt with this, loving this. Life will flip up, down. Times this bottle make you smile, times this bottle make you frown. My ace came home from a bid, whole hood came out with them bottles. Time be flying, cause most of us haven't seen homies since high school. We pop these bottles, cause we celebrating. Flip side when I'm off this yak, better not bring confrontation. Flip side, I pop a bottle during conversation. Flip side, I sip this yak just for some toleration. Shit I be facing, shit I be seeing, knowing the facts. I cannot hide from the truth, there ain't no options for that. And I be knowing I got bills to pay, but I'm behind my way to cope with. It's the sip away, these thoughts all on my mind. Sit there, hit the pussy, make my dick pressure her spine. Ran into some money, now my bank looking alright. We sip yeah cause we fly. I overthink when I'm alone, may sip and cry. Sometimes this liquor be having me speak my mind. I'm in my feelings, wondering if my cousin's fine. Hope she's alright.
Money look like it's on the comeback. Mama's doing better, got her appetite back. I'll be sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak. Keep up with the times, days used to be long. Studio recording the same song. Got me sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak. Got me out of character, girl, you're powerful. Feeling things that I never felt before. I'll be sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak.
Surgery after surgery, the same old thing. Hospital visits, doctors, and them same IVs. Cousin, I know you suffer from this vicious disease. Pain and the aches enough to leave you weak in your knees. Trust me, it hurts to think of close ones. Time's ticking, keep them in good spirits. Let them know that you with them. Every day I be wishing that I had all the answers. Choice for all of these poisons, choice for all of these cancers. You know when blood cells have a hook on them, they say it trims your life expectancy, your days is slim. But not my cousin, she's strong. I can't imagine my auntie watching her child suffer. Look through the eyes of these fathers, look through the lens of these mothers, enough to let that yak trip. Feel these emotions and gravitate towards the sadness. But yo, my cousin is strong. We gon' pour it up and keep moving on. You built to last, ain't going nowhere. You gon' prove Dr. wrong. So trust me, family, ain't no need to cry. Let's try together and just keep our heads up to the sky. I drink and toast to that, cause lately I've been feeling foul. Chasing this Henny with crown, my liver's probably about to drown. I lost a brother-in-law, his father started a fund to honor his name. I never had the ill to ask him how he dealt with the pain. I wasn't there for the visits, I only saw all the smiles. It's hard to fathom with the vision of him losing his child.
Money look like it's on the comeback. Mama's doing better, got her appetite back. I'll be sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak. Keep up with the times, days used to be long. Studio recording the same song. I'll be sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak. Got me out of character, girl, you're powerful. Feeling things that I never felt before. I'll be sipping yak, sipping yak, sipping yak.
We built the last.
I'm outside right now. I'm live. On my ass. About to spit a freestyle. I'm out here. Yeah. This shit crazy how you can do this shit. Yeah. If I had this shit back in the day when I was on my time, this shit be crazy, man. Out here.
Underworld ENT coming to you.
I'm out here. 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 On the block another time, I'm out here.
wanna drop another rhyme, I'm out here, I'm out here. Yo, it's about the nick of time, I'm out here, I'm out here. Your niggas down and out there, I'm out here, I'm out here. Your niggas know I'm back in the place, y'all. Your niggas about to catch it to your face, y'all. Your niggas getting hit with the face, y'all. Your niggas got the fifth, well I'm out here. You wanna come and get, well I'm out here. o.stylez and you know this niggas out here. I'm out here.
Yo, man, we tuning in. Underworld Official, Underworld Radio Station, Underworld Movement. It's Underworld everything. Yeah!
I'm out here. I'm out here. I'm out here. Underworld Television and Underworld Radio. I'm out here. I'm out here. I'm out here. Your niggas talking heavy shit, I'm out here. I'm out here. Your niggas really wanna get them out here. I'm out here. You really talking real shit, I'm out here. I'm out. Got the motherfucking cat.
I'm cold, you can't tell the time on the rolling. Nah, I don't need no more homies. Bitch, I'm the cake, you gon' blow me. Pocket so swole like Vic Brody. Freak, just take.
Hold up. Before we get back into this music, what we over here doing right now, shout out to my man. I can't even really say your name, but I'm going to just say Silas. Much love to you, brother. Everybody's welcome in the underworld. He talking in Spanish in the chat room. Nobody really know what he's saying, but much love to you for even coming in here. I think he came in here for Miss Kiana. So shouts to her too, man. Shouts to everybody that's been sharing the show. We got a lot of people that shared the show tonight and showed love. And that's what I've been wanting since I started this whole movement, man. If you look behind me, you can see that's my CD store right there. The link, undergroundentertainment.bandcamp.com. You could go on that site and check all this music that I play, support the movement, support these artists, and we just keep going, man. UTV Raps is about to be back on air. For everybody tuning in, man, this is Underworld Television, and we promote a lot of things on Underworld Television, as far as UTV Raps, which is our online video show. Underworld Radio, which is our underground radio station, you know what I'm saying? So for all y'all out there that's tuning in, much love. We need that support. Keep liking and sharing the shows. When I throw the episodes up, make sure y'all take the episodes and, you know, get them lost in the internet for me. And that's how we doing right now. I don't got the request lines on right now because we got a bad storm going. And, you know, the reception is going to be crazy. So, you know, I left the phone lines off, but tomorrow's 420, definitely. And my baby girls is coming down from Jersey to hang out with their dad. So much love for that. You know, I'm happy. I'm feeling good. I'm out in Florida in the hot sun, even though they had a storm today that I got caught in, but it's all G. I love it. I love being out here. You know, all my chat rooms got people in it. I'm waiting for all of them to fill up. Like I said, I'm on 10 different sites, man. So for all y'all that's tuning in and, you know, submitting your music, submitting your works of art to me, just know that we doing our job, man. We promoting y'all on 10 different sites, you know, and we getting up, you know, going up a lot higher in a minute. So salutes and shouts to everybody, man. Like I said, shout out to my man, Mr. Silas, for hanging out. Like I said, he's speaking Spanish in the chat room, and you know, nobody in the chat room knows Spanish, I don't think, anyway. But shouts to him for even coming in and just showing that we reaching the masses. You know, we got people from all over tuning into the show. So shouts to you, brother. Shouts to Danger. He been definitely sharing a lot for a brother, man. Much love to you, the whole URF fam. Brother Ron Morris definitely always supports me. You know, it shows love to the things I'm doing right now. So shout out to that whole squad, as well as the whole Fresh Flow ENT squad, Commotion, Sneaker King, Jakim, Letty, Paul, you know what I'm saying? Small Paul, my homie. Yo, all of y'all out there, man, we just gonna keep it going. And I definitely gotta give a shout out to my Underworld officials, Crisis, K Smash, they're my brothers right there. Nothing can separate us, we brothers. And that's what it is. So, man, y'all stay tuned. I'm gonna get back into some music, but I just wanted to put that out there for y'all, man. Definitely check out this banner I got behind me. Trying to get out the way. This banner, that's my CD store right there, where you can definitely download anything Underworld. on that site right there. So we got a lot of mix CDs. A lot of the music I'm playing is on these CDs. If any of y'all want to get your music put on some of these CDs, definitely hit me up. If you want to get some videos put on our show, which is UTV Raps, hit me up. And you know, we just gonna keep it going like that, man. It's your boy Stickity o.stylez. We in the underworld. This is what we do. New Age of hip hop and R&B. So let's get back in, y'all.
It's me like joke me. They say I'm clean like I'm soapy. Socking it to McFoley. Out here, but really I'm low key. I'm lit, forget that you know me. No laughing, nah, no joking. I miss 2 Fridays like smoke. King, it's okay. Underworld. I really need you to show me. Won't let these hold me, so many to hold me. I do my dirt by my lonely. Won't turn me back to the old me. Shout out my brother, my woody. Burning tree made me feel holy. And it's free, all of the homie. Trick this my game and I'm cold. Can't tell the time on the rolling. Nah, I don't need no more homies. I'm the cake, you gon' blow me. Pocket so swole like Big Brody. Freak, just text me like joke me. They say I'm clean like I'm soapy. Socking it to McFoley. Out here, but really I'm low key. I'm lit, forget that you know me. No laughing, nah, no joking. I miss 2 Fridays like Smokey. Just when you think and you cozy, you getting clapped with the 40. Told them that they do not know me. Skinny hut, just bulky. But I do not want that. No. Left on red like roll. Yo, chicken head like pole. Yo, crazy or they low. Eat it all like cold. Chocolate no homo. I just crush like 4. Now I need like 4 more. And so many of them really want make it. I told her if you want it, then you better come make it. I'm just being real, I like you better ball naked. And when I'm diving deep, she be screaming, baby. She be screaming, baby. Can't help the way they fly when they see that, baby. Shout out to them times when I was broke because they made me. Tall like shooters, but they really faking. But better know his place before he never make it home. Never round third base. Never ever seen his face. Didn't even leave a trace. If he didn't leave a trace, then he don't got a case. Young, but I'm strong. King strong like Mike. King strong like Sprite. Rubber grip, good night. Have a taste, take a sip. Leave him froze like ice. Blew away like crip. Shook I like really dice. Need you to show me. Won't let these hold me. So many to hold me. I do my dirt by my lonely. Won't turn me back to the old me. Shout out my brother, my woody. Burning tree make me feel holy. And it's free, all of the homie. Trick this my game and I'm Kobe. Can't tell the time on the rolling. Nah, I don't need no more homies. I'm the cake, you gon' blow me. Pocket so swole like Big Brody. Freak, just text me like joke me. They say I'm clean like I'm soapy. Socking it to McFoley. But I do not want that. No, left on red like roll. Chicken head like pole. Yo, crazy or they low. Eat it.
Bring it back. Brace yourself. I put your head in your lap. Taste yourself. Your man running up is a waste of help. On my Jeffrey Dahmer, cut out your heart, throw it in the grinder. Cook pancakes and use it as my Aunt Jemima. The dark side of my thoughts rise when I'm caged in. I talk slicker than Ali at the weigh-in. I should end it here, but I got more in store. I won't get into detail of shipping them retail and making them greet me like the Lord of War. Trying to stack my paper, not be mad at you, cause I'm curious about the culture in Africa. They want me living life something like Attica, so I'm forced to smash your melon like Gallagher. Please do remember how I can get you. Rip your days in half and leave your calendar dismembered. And so it seems the spotlight's on me, so I'ma get the streets what they need. They want that fire, they want that fire. I'ma give them that fire, I'ma give them what they need. And so it seems the spotlight's on me, so I'ma get the people what they feed. They want that fire, they want that fire. I'ma give them that fire, I'ma give them what they need. Cream on the inside, brown on the outside. Talking about my dick chick, open up your mouth wide. You don't want static,
change the channel. I can arrange the vigil, just bring some candles. Hit your block like some eggs, how I made them scramble. After that, I'm taking off like Cape Canaveral. I was the force underground with the bass and treble. Now I'm the heat on the surface like a solar panel. Fuck the song, it's literal how I do a hater. Leave the body in a tree, call it human nature. Beat your ass with my belt buckle, booty tang ya. Fumigate ya, think you the shit, I duty stain ya. Dig a hole and let a mole find you. Forget 2 guns, you see 4 arms like I clotheslined you. Class is in session if the magnum is the weapon. Somebody get him some help like the classified
so
section.
it seems the spotlight's on me, so I'ma get the streets what they need. They want that fire, they want that fire. I'ma give them that fire, I'ma give them what they need. And so it seems the spotlight's on me, so I'ma get the people what they feed. They want that fire, they want that fire. I'ma give them that fire, I'ma give them what they need.
In my lane, no games, I'm trying to just win. So I'm a man up, like 9 against 10. I'm hotter than the sun, who wanna shine against him? Got a swimming pool jab, it'll dive in your chin. Y'all act real funny and I'm trying not to grin. How you run to jail but can't dial out the pen? I work shorty out like I styled in the gym, but keep a low profile, proud with the brim. It's me and my team, so grab the towel, throw it in. That's hardcore beef like a cow with some Timbs. Come to my dojo, we can bow and get it in. Crack on the streets, got the competition looking slim. Creme de la creme, yo quiero cualquiera. Let me stop. My flow is a spatula, how I control the pot. My blood pressure cracking the levee over the top, and I can drive the streets crazy, getting chauffeured for the nuts.
So it seems the spotlight's on me, so I'ma get the streets what they need. They want that fire, they want that fire. I'ma give them that fire, I'ma give them what they need. And so it seems the spotlight's on me, so I'ma get the people what they feed. They want that fire, they want that fire. I'ma give them that fire, I'ma give them what they need.
Shouts to my homie Q-Mo, Fresh Flow ENT. Commotion is definitely the next wave. Let's get it, y'all. Let's go.
Yo, Sticky, the o.stylez, what up? Underworld. LaCar BYOB. Stan Hope House. Cooler Cafe, Conscious Youth, Danny Clinch and Asbury Park. Farmer Boys. First Famine. Supreme Alliance. I appreciate all y'all for putting me on.
Underworld.
Shout out to Rel. Bugs in the South Jersey Cyphers, what up? But how come I ain't never get put on the Jersey Fresh Jam or Art All Nighter, the Marsden House Cyphers and all that? How come you ain't put me on?
Yeah.
What up? I know y'all see me. I been y'all town, man. What's good? I don't get it. It's like I'm knee deep in freedom of speech, freedom of weep. It's easy to creep, count sheep in your sleep. It's, nah, man. I ain't gonna do that.
You can get them.
It's like I think they kind of scared. It's like
they scared of you, bro. Let them know
you
what you do.
You need to. I don't know, man. It's like
I need you to talk for
it's like you lock your bars before they can break out. Shoot back a paparazzi and call that media takeout. So who's next to catch this tongue lashing from the city where even kitties sticky for gun stashes? Smoked up, knocked off, blown away, blunt ashes. Let's see who can run fastest. Head of the street, fam, running with the best. You the end of the week, man. WTF? 3X banging in your cipher, time's overdue. If I rhyme over you, here's my rhyme overview. What commotions spew, mostly roasting and toasting you. Many y'all call commotions leading a chosen few. Kinetic energy flow with a century. Freeze MCs like mad MP3s on PCs. If you're killing your memory mentally, not a word to think. Razor sharpen your pencil, punish you with the pad and pen. Then I just murder the ink. No more silence, just violence, sirens, sad music, violence. Don't believe me, then try it, then get your goonies or hire men. Meet the Trenton version of Murder 1. Bite a pen, hobnob with goblins. Maybe it's Leviathan, inciting the rioting. Well, come on, invite him then. I'll be ready to fight with them. So I built myself up, chewing on these one-word punchlines. Vitamin. So what this tyrant is trying to insinuate that I'm watching disintegrate right from my dinner plate. Principle of the matter is I'm here to administrate the abolition of mainstream. Time to integrate, lyrically renovate, innovating the best weapons. Commotion putting words together is a death sentence. You can't call me out from dead zones. Go to your cemetery and urinate from the headstones. I get it, headstones. If I ain't dead homes, there's a resurrection of real rap in your headphones. Kill.
Yes.
Oh man. o.stylez, bro, I think they scared, man.
They scared of you,
I know y'all see me going city to city. I be in your city, y'all ain't even invite me to your cypher or to your show. It's all good. It's just a little old Q. I mean, I'm a humble dude. I mean, I just spit from the heart. I show love, man.
I don't know, man. I give credit where credit is due, man. You don't see me out with the whole Fresh Flow camp and all that much. I just mostly roll dolo. Y'all ain't scared, are you? I mean, it's not like I'll like out rhyme you or anything. It's like would I really out rhyme you and your whole team? Well, on second thought, maybe you should be scared. Chill.
Coming to you live for Underworld Radio. It's your boy Ziggity o.stylez. Live for Commotion, Fresh Flow ENT. Y'all scared, man.
Another loop. All fan. My enemies be praying, cause I rock with a big ass chopper. Don't care how big you is, it'll chop you, it'll stop you, then drop you. This verse might hurt, had me on my knees praying for this work like go berserk on you jerks. I'm an old head OG, put in work, you will get hurt slowly. If I make that calico work, put you pussies in the dirt. If you know me, I'm pulling bitches skirt. Bang, bang, bang. They got me rockin' with that thing. Bang, bang, rockin' with that thing. They got me rockin' with that thing. They can bring pain in this game. Chopper start spraying like it's rain. They can do a damn thing. Yo, my enemies be playing. Now they praying. Amen. I will slay all of them in the end. You an enemy, your friend, me, you get 10. Especially if you a rat like Ben. Pussy cats get clapped 9 times in the chin. 9 lots for me to spin. As you spin like a whirlwind. Don't make you bang, bang, bang. They got me rockin' with that thing. Bang, rockin' with that thing. They got me rockin' with that thing. Cats act as well as Denzel for real. You are not real, don't make a real nigga hurt you. I heard you lose escape, letting niggas all in your circle walking around like step 5 when you knowing that you Urkel. Yo, you phone in the cop. Yo, I do the 9 to 5 promote, hustle, hope, rob, bang. Bitch, I'm on my job. Build a life bomb, no time for kids to cop. Just a law till I got this shit locked. Haters make us need to stop. My gun is got. They got me rockin' with that thing. Riding with that thing. They got me rockin' with that thing. I bring the law of the underworld and the law. I bring the law of the underworld and the law. I bring the law of the underworld and the law. I bring the law of the underworld and the law. I bring the law of the underworld and the law. I bring the law of the underworld and the law. I bring the law of the underworld and the law. I bring the law of the underworld and the bang. Yeah, they got me rockin' with that thing. Yes, yeah, rockin' over that thing. Underworld, rockin' with that thing. CBI, on the board, bang, bang, bang. Please don't make me come out my fucking shell. Shouts to CBL, that's my fucking brothers. CBL, smell the loop, you know I love you. We in the underworld, this is that movement. o.stylez bring that new shit, exclusive. I do not do like y'all niggas, man. I'm on a whole nother level.
They said $20 a dog, right? And then they got 3 of them dogs, man. We good. Hey, look, you wouldn't understand if your family came from another hood or a place of violence where they placed the silence on the tip of pistols, but the loud is good. Just to push the limits, take 1,000 pulls. Pray for peace around the howling ghouls that took the dip off that waterway and drowned instantly. Just had 1,000 pulls. Lord whistle with a lifeguard. We were kids, but we all in the deep end too. So much death in a small drop. You can taste your soul, just a hell is cool. As the vein injected by the fluid and the leaves ignited, put a window in your brain cell or an open door left unsecured, or open sore from where your pain dwells. We can finally release it. In the high we shall increase it. This environment we unleash it. We can finally defeat it. See the zombie scenes completed, and the Sherman's all we needed. A couple dips of this, the conniption hits as a hypnotist to see some. 18 when he rolled up, Puerto Rican JCMD showed up. 25 years, he a little older. 25 broken chips on the shoulder. Said I was little bro, he was getting way flyer than he used to. I mean flyer than the usual. And he was getting way more higher than he used to. I mean higher than the usual. Damn.
Can you boost it? Do you think you shall it?
Show enough.
Can you take it to the corner so they can inhale it?
Show enough.
Right. Can you niggas stand up? Please tell me that you mailed it.
Show enough.
Right. Do you think the double back and wanna grab a second?
Show enough.
Let me get some hardy. That bullshit.
Let me get some
hardy. That bullshit.
Let me get some
hardy. That bullshit.
Let me get some
hardy. That hardy.
Let me get some. Hey, distractions here are extracting all of my biggest features. A third eye with a shut lid and a third arm for the back blader. 2 horns for the seed notes that you never see, but the sound reach ya. Arm length full of roots of evil. Armed heavy, army cerebral. I've avoided what they want me to stress. Poverty about the piss and the less. Black full of mutants, me Professor X and the culinary chemist with I ain't chef. I've been everywhere but paradise. I can tell them what the terror like. I can tell they ain't been through hell and back. My nigga, your feathers bright. Says she drug kids a multiple choice. Pass with flying colors, passing this joint. A pass a demon, why you passing your point? The common sense of passing is passing the point. Wouldn't understand if your family came from another hood, but they placed the bottom of the spoon on lighters and the dishes nasty, but the town is good.
Right? Can you boost it? Do you think you shall it?
Show enough.
Can you take it to the corner so they can inhale it?
Show enough.
Right? Can you niggas stand up? Please tell me that you mailed it.
Show enough.
Right? Do you think the double back and wanna grab a second?
Show enough.
Let me get some hardy. That bullshit.
Let me get some
hardy. That bullshit.
Let me get some
hardy. That bullshit.
Let me get some
hardy. That hardy.
Let me get some.
The new age of hip hop, pop, pop.
Hey, hold on, hey, hold on, hey. Baby, I ain't for the low, for the solo. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. I ain't for the low, for the solo. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. Now a little bitch wanna come on. I ain't for the low, for the solo. Now a little bitch wanna hold on. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. I ain't for the low, for the solo. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. Now a little bitch wanna come on. She listens to living my life. She wanna come fuck me tonight. She wanna come touch me tonight. Her pussy is wearing this tight. She sound be swimming all night. The sound be swimming all night. Her booty jiggling when she walk. You see the dimples when she talk. Shorty call me from the West End. She said she flexing with her best friend. I'm in the trap, little J. I'm in the trap, little baby. Smoking dope in Lil Cali. I flew my bitch in from the valley. All of my niggas, they stally. See how he towing that blicky. And he gon' shoot till it's empty. If you not gang, you can't hang. Hold on, if you're not gang, you can't hang. Hold on, Cutie, he towing that F in there. And he gon' shoot till there's nothing in it. Cody and Snoop bring the straps out. I for that bitch for a back guy. I ain't for the low, but it's all on. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. I ain't for the low, but it's all on. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. Now a little bitch wanna come on. I ain't for the low, but it's all on. Now a little bitch wanna hold on. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. I ain't for that love, but it's all on. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. Now a little bitch wanna come on.
I'm tryna tell her to come on. Lately I've been gone. I've been moving fast, you gon' have to hold on. A Mary James, red bottom, Givenchy for a living. Ain't been in town in so long, but when I get back, I'ma kid it. I put 100 on the freeway. Just call me when they touch down in BK. I got youngins with that gunplay in broad day. It ain't safe where I come from, but you gon' have to hold on. Did it on my own, ain't have no help, I think myself. $1,000 bills, European when I still had to boss up on them niggas. Ain't have no other choice. Everything I said, I mean it. You can hear it in my voice. I put a little bit of solo. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. Hold on, hold on. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. I put a little bit of solo. Now a little bitch, give me hold on. Hold on, hold on. Now a little bitch wanna come on. I ain't for the little bit of solo. Now a little bitch wanna hold on. Hold on, hold on. Now a little bitch give me hold on. I ain't for that little bit of solo. Now a little bitch give me hold on. Hold on, hold on. Now a little bitch wanna come on.
I'm always on my dick, I'm Adrian, what up? Yeah. Seen this mean kind of stuff, I'm really honest. I feel like it's to get along when I'm just being honest. Don't wanna have a problem, son, step back. Cause I ain't falling back just because you say you strap fast. In life, I was dealt a bad hand. Y'all bred me a warrior that's able to withstand. No preservatives, alcohol, or drugs. For the honesty alone, no hatred, it's all love. For space fillers and I don't use the word nigga. Michael Jackson rhymes, each one of these a thriller. Fatally honest, cause son of deception killer. I take no bribes, hate lies, no ties to anything not solid. That's how me grind, man. No progression, only progression for what profit. That we may be able to stand in this simple just because we live for the truth and we did it out of love.
Yo, I'm always on my dick. I'm always on my grind. I'm always on my dick.
And no I'm out of darkness that comes my way to scuff my shine.
I'm sick of that same song and dance in a circle like the hokey poke. No longer go for the okey doke. I'm on my dean as a man for my fam. Career change cause J.O.B. me just over broke. Cause we know the hope's gone when the streets are grew up on. Scripted, unpredicted, the storm. My people you can warn. Profiled and harassed by police in uniform. Pray for the spirit of the culture to be reborn. Rappers seeing me's like seeing a unicorn. Claim to be the boss but you're down on your knees doing porn. You can form but I won't take no shorts. I ain't no coon. Not the sharpest knife in the drawer but it ain't no fork and it ain't no spoon. I stay tuned like the tube all up in your homes. Grind like arthritic bones. Dean of the students, now this movement will be melanized. To feel this revolution, whether or not it's televised. Yo, I'm always on my dick. I'm always on my grind. I'm always on my dick.
And no I'm out of darkness that comes my way to scuff my shine.
No time to sleep or get you killed. Black face in these streets, not a minstrel film. On my dean like a college for knowledge. We getting dollars, so we shine like we polish. Sure this thing turn real. Forward on to the past persecution, this new problem. Born in the past and the future, that's new tolerance. New algorithms, love when the G's home. Plus I'm getting dough, guess it's stuck in the genome. Don't chase paper, swing the axe to the tree gone. IRS, pay your tax, that's a street loan. Can't kinda for dollars. Blue collar, don't go to jail for white collars, that's true robbers. Players couldn't score on my goal if they played soccer. Never won an Oscar, never won a Grammy. Yeah, I feel I won when I'm looking at my family. Yeah, I feel I won when I'm looking at my family.
But I ain't got time for a bitch. I cannot wind it down with a bitch. I won't waste my time with a bitch. Gotta go and get mine. I'm on my grind and this bitch won't stop. Can't block my shine. I'ma get money all on my mind and shit. Gotta put a dime on wrist.
These niggas don't know me. I don't hard to rock. I ain't Kobe. Half a mil split it all with my brodies. We empty the safe, then reload it. They holding my spot. I was down, I climbed straight to the top. Niggas tried and they played, they got shot. Better duck when you hear that. I'm on some new shit. When we fuck, get it wet like a pulpit. She gon' fuck for Chanel or that Gucci. She buy that shit, she ready for movies. If she fucking a Zoe, it's a Zuvi. Just a bit, bitch, my sweater is Coogee. If you lost me right now, who you losing? I want love on these hoes, we can choose them. Hear my voice, all these bitches go crazy. I get two of these niggas be lazy. I turn pro, all these niggas to training. I started my own campaign. All black bottles, we sipping champagne. Celebrate after we break the bank. Pull up, babe, that bitch give me brain. When we fuck, she be grabbing my chain. God damn.
Back off, little bitch, back off. I'm on my grind, I can't slack off. I run it back, no need backup. All I know is how to get them racks up.
She like, why we can't never build? I got no time to fucking chill, baby. I'm really chasing these fucking bills. Just want me bring home another
my girl, but I ain't got time for a bitch. I cannot wind it down with a bitch. I won't waste my time with a bitch. Gotta go and get mine. I'm on my grind and this bitch won't stop, can't block my shine. I'ma get money all on my mind and shit. Gotta put a dime on my wrist.
These niggas don't know me. I don't hard to rock, I ain't Kobe. Half a mil split it all with my brodies. We empty to save the reloaded. They holding my spot. I was down, I climbed straight to the top. Niggas tried and they played and got shot. Better duck when you hear that.
Leak, do you know him?
Nah, juice, a nigga don't know him.
Load them sticks and get ready to blow.
Say less, my nigga, I'm blowing.
Hit up check till that nigga is smoke.
10-4, I know check, he on go.
We gon' bend the block, yeah, I know they a foe.
Fuck, nigga, we gon' triple the scope.
If they hit my phone, you know I'm on go. All my niggas on your block now. Bending your bitch, yeah, now you get tricky. Drop the top, let the shots out. Niggas be talking like they be outside, but when we slide, never pop out. Little them cage, you ready to ride. When you see me, ain't no cop out.
Back off, little bitch, back off. I'm on my grind, I can't slack off. I run it back, don't need backup. All I know is how to get them racks up.
She like, why we can't never build? I got no time to fucking chill, baby. I'm really chasing these fucking bills. Just want me bring home another
my girl, but I ain't got time for a bitch. I cannot wind it down with a bitch. I won't waste my time with a bitch. Gotta go and get mine. I'm on my grind and this bitch won't stop, can't block my shine. I'ma get money all on my mind and shit. Gotta put a dime on my wrist.
These niggas don't know me. I don't hard to rock, I ain't Kobe. Half a mil split it all with my brodies. We empty to save the reloaded. They holding my spot. I was down, I climbed straight to the top. Niggas tried and they played, they got shot. Better duck when you hear that.
I clap back. I clap back. I clap back. Please don't make me clap back. I clap back. I clap back. I clap back. Please don't make me clap back. Back, 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 back. Please don't make me clap back. Back, 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 back. Please don't make me clap back. I am not an asshole. I am like the whole crack. If you try to come back, I will fucking clap back. I will clap at your hat. Knock that shit straight off. This is off the top. Nigga, don't try to play me soft. Yo, I'm back in this bitch. o.stylez, I'm getting rich. Me and my fucking chick. About to make some fucking bricks. That's high. I high. Y'all niggas know I stay fly to the sky. Please don't make me clap back on the fucking battle app. Niggas just wanna rap. That's a fact. That's all cool. I'ma take you back to school. I ain't a fool playing around. This is from the ghost town. New Jersey all around. Please don't make me put you down. I clap back. I clap back. I clap back. Please don't make me clap back. I clap back. I clap back. I clap back. Please don't make me clap back. Back, 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 back. Please don't make me clap back. Back.
What's up, Queen B? How you been? Much love.
o.stylez, yeah, special up to you too. Queen Bean, and I mean that. Call you a king bean for whatever struggle you have been through. You a king for that. You made it. You made it to tell your story, to pass that message, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I know it's true.
It's true. Okay, believe that. It's true. It's not a game. It's not a game. When you do all your bullshit, keep your ass at home like me. So when you get fucked up, you fall asleep in your bed and wake up like a nigga.
You be tripping.
Your ass better be home too. You heard what I said. You heard what I said. Everybody play. You better be at home. So peace out.
Shouts to my girl Queen B for tuning into the show. Much love to you, Underworld Radio, with your boy Sticky o.stylez. Beats by my Underworld. Request lines is definitely.
producer.
Yeah. I still got the moves. 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 I pull up in the farm, make your lady wanna choose. Hey, I still got the moves. 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 I still got the sauce. But no matter what the cost, ride around that floss. Leave haters pissed off. Hey, I still got the moves. I still got the moves. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, I still got the moves.
I still got the moves. Wait, I see you watching my moves. Niggas be hating, they want to see me lose. Spice on my sneeze, Louboutin be the shoes. She see the whip, so I know she gon' choose. Niggas be mad cause they know I'm a boss. Just bought a roller, you know I'm a floss. Shit costs a bag, I ain't care what it costs. Diamonds be dancing, I live in the loft. Wait, she fell in love with my moves. Wanna find out how I'm making the moves. She see the watch and the chain and she like it's insane, but I'm like you in love with the juice. Wait, you see my face on the tube. Hope you could do what you say you could do. Just bought a crib, couple acres or two. Brand new whip, don't play with the crew. Ride around town all day with the ooze. Fuck around, see my face on the news. Brand new trees lay right with the truths. Everything I got, I made on the move. Everything lit, no shade in the room. Gun so big, it's the size of a broom. Keep getting money, I'm trying to see an M. Don't play games, every day is a win. Tupac shit, cause I'm above on the rim. New snapback, got my name on the brim. 18 carats in the mouth for the grin. 19.5, what I pay for the Benz. Did a couple years locked down in the pen. Nigga got big cause I stayed in the gym. Lil OJ, no ice in the gin. Keep making moves, don't play with my pen.
I still got the moves. 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 I pull up in the farm, make your lady wanna choose. Hey, I still got the moves. 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 I still got the sauce. But no matter what the cost, ride around that floss. Leave haters pissed off. Hey, I still got the moves. I still got the moves. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, I still got the moves. I still got the moves.
Shout out to Slob Gang, Woozy, man. Belly in the building. Underworld, let's go.
Try to make it out, get paid off the rap. Got a big ass gun, this a K with a strap. New bench shit, no payment on that. Big ass check, got my name on the back. New wave shit, got it banging on the map. I'm G4 flight on the island with that. GQ shit, no style is a match. 14 bands, what I had in the whack. Down AC, getting wild on the yak. Had a long ride home, got brain in the act. I don't know why no strings was attached. She gon' be mad when she see I'm on the map. In the Play Store, got my own little app. Take it to the streets, got the name on the hat. New coupe shit, no room in the back. Niggas stay wavy, I don't play with the rap. Gotta make moves, no time to relax. New white tee with the 9.5 max. In my lifetime, like Ho with the hat. Everything I lost, but I got right back. Now I'm on tour, getting paid for the act. Not BC, but I play with the Mac.
I still got the moves. 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 I pull up in the farm, make your lady wanna choose. Hey, I still got the moves. 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 I still got the sauce. But no matter what the cost, ride around that floss. Leave haters pissed off. Hey, I still got the moves. I still got the moves. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, I still got the moves. I still got the moves.
We did this shit cause we had to, and I ain't stopping till my mother in that castle. I'm on this bag, I don't know why you mad, boo. Full speed on the gas, they smell a lot when I pass through. Time to run it up with the gang, nigga. No games, nigga, I'm still here with the same niggas. My whole team, we ain't playing with you. No games, nigga, I'm still here with the same niggas.
Remember I was broke, all that money I was missing it. It's level in its differences, fucking all of these mistresses. It's fish up in the sea, I guess my team gon' be the fishermen. The posture's so militant like Jordan when he dishing it, yeah. I cross them over cause they started doing mixy shit. To ease the pain, I flood the wrist, 340 out the government. Them apples on that sucker shit, big bird, I had to pluck it quick. My brothers who I'm fucking with for anyone, dumped 100 clip, yeah. No hesitation, to that bag, yeah, we racing. Mama told me be patient, once you get it, they start hating. Start forming all these relations, reach their hands, I ain't shaking. Bad little bitch, yeah, she shaking. T.O. think we really made it. Out the trench on some army shit. Trap on tilt, supply the strip. And you know we hiring. Quick 10K inside the strip. Like this, my shit, the Lions Den. You heard wrong, I'm not your friend. T.O.D. we did it again. Flood to protect and secure my skin. Gang.
We did this shit cause we had to, and I ain't stopping till my mother in that castle. I'm on this bag, I don't know why you mad, boo. Full speed on the gas, they smell a lot when I pass through. Time to run it up with the gang, nigga. No games, nigga, I'm still here with the same niggas.
My whole team, we ain't playing with you. No games, nigga, I'm still here with the same niggas. I can't fuck with you if you out here moving funny style. Running wild, I'm shmoney dancing to that money now. Since a child, I just wanted to make my mother proud. Fell in love with this music, time for me to say my vows. Got a thou and I flipped it back into another dial. Put it all in this movement, grooving through the fucking town. With the gang, it ain't no thing to get 100 rounds. Youngest hungry, they get this money and we on the prowl. Yeah, you niggas really not stopping shit. I got no time for the mentions or the gossip shit. They talk about us cause we always been the topic, bitch. Bitches want my phone crazy, stupid, I had to block the bitch. Yeah, I'm always here with the same niggas. Louis T.O.D., yeah, they know the name, nigga. I'm just known for spitting this flame, nigga. No games, nigga, get introduced to this pain, nigga. We did this shit cause we had to, and I ain't stopping till my mother in that castle. I'm on this bag, I don't know why you mad, boo. Full speed on the gas, they smell loud when I pass through. Time to run it up with the gang, nigga. No games, nigga, I'm still here with the same niggas. Facts. My whole team, we ain't playing with you. No games, nigga, I'm still here with the same niggas.
I'm cool, calm, collective. This money on my checklist. When you broke out here, you start moving reckless. Niggas gotta respect it. Everything I did, I don't regret it. You only live once, don't forget it. I see myself like Rollo in a Rari, fuck a Tahoe. I'm trying to swerve the potholes. Big hefe like I'm Pablo. Odds up, but the top low. Got cheese like Nacho. Crack your shell, you a taco. I need my money pronto, or I'm OJ in a Bronco. Nigga bag talk, I ain't really with the convo. I'm getting older like where all the time go. December 8th, young nigga was letting off that rondo in these streets like I'm John Doe. And if it ain't about that money, nigga, dead your convo. I'm with the gang, nigga. Keep it 100, they do the same with you. And ever since I was born, I've been the same nigga. You play with me if you want, and I ain't playing with you. We did this shit cause we had to, and I ain't stopping till my mother in that castle. I'm on this bag, I don't know why you mad, boo. Full speed on the gas, they smell loud when I pass through. Time to run it up with the gang, nigga. No games, nigga, I'm still here with the same niggas. My whole team, we ain't playing with you. No games, nigga, I'm still here with the same niggas. I just wanted more life, less drama and more commas. Make a toast to the game and make sure that we all got us. We did this through the rain, ain't none of y'all gonna stop us. T.O.D., they know the name, and they saying that we the topic, that's gangster.
Like a pharaoh to the queen when they made love. The king born to show the world what I made of. Best of the best, yes, even when I'm at my worst. Killing time, killing every beat, killing every rhyme, killing every line. Diverse. I'm a star when I spit these bars. I go so hard, I hate leaving. Praise God that I'm on my job, cause I be in the eyes and I break even. Wanna feel but don't feel my hunger. Ice grill wanna steal my thunder. Tryna rain on my parade, but operating your rain with a big umbrella. Ella. When you wanna cause pain to somebody doing things that you wanna be a part of. But you can't, so you raving, you ran at any given chance instead of working harder. I being smarter. Yeah, I'm staying in my lane, doing my thing and trying to break through. Yeah, I'm changing the game, but I'm staying the same. When you was hitting, I didn't hate you. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and it wants some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and it wants some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine. I take it and run with it, that's how I ball. Hogging these shots, that's what I call. Going Kobe on y'all, yeah, I'm driving in the lane. Beat, now I can stay in the rain. He hard. Wanna see me fall, but you see me leaving y'all in the dust. Cost me the cuss. The regulator dropped the bomb and I'm the detonator. Going up the escalator, dropped the bomb and y'all are hella haters. When fall came and y'all knew it, blew it. Talk big dreams, but you still didn't do it. I believe you can achieve it, but if you really mean it, then you live and breathe it. Till then I believe it when I see it. You watch things happen, great things happen. You wonder what happened, I made things happen. I'm the head of the street fan, running with the best. You the end of the week, man, WTF. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and it wants some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and it wants some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you. Round and around, you be turning me, you're spurring me, you're burning me. To do a big for eternity, but ain't no hurting me, and no diverting me from my goals and aspirations. Negative thoughts out the mind, concentration. Focus, man, on my future success. Good brothers all vexed and distressed by the skills I'm possessed. What a mess, I confess. I wanna be a model, of course I'm a scholar. Entrepreneur, your father, pocket more of my daughters. Watch it about it with the thought of it demise. They try to bring me down, but still I arise, recognize. Stacking up chips to go wide, surprise. rise. Got a gleam in my eyes, $1 million dream to realize. Ride for both my sons, now I'm on the run just to be second to none to number one. If you get mad, I don't care. Stay down in the barrel that y'all crap share. Kiss the dairy air of an MC square. Debonair, legendary scorer like Jordan in the air. Yeah, everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and they want some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and they want some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every
Definitely
some of them
rocking
is
with the
fine.
underworld, man. That's my squad right here, man.
Coast to coast.
Fresh Flow ENT, man. Salutes, and shouts to y'all. We going in right now. This is a new age of hip hop and R&B with your boy Stiggity o.stylez. You know how we do up in here by now, man. We just go in. It's a hood show. We do hood shit. You know what I'm saying? And we really just go hard right now. So salutes to everybody that's fucking with us right now. Like I said, we had a lot of people come in and hang out with us today, and that blew my mind to see so many people stopping by the show, and that's because a lot of people were sharing the show throughout the show. Like I said, for the various sites that we're on, y'all can all go follow us on all these sites. You know what I'm saying? Periscope, YouTube. Definitely subscribe to me on YouTube, even though I got like 2 YouTube pages. So I'm actually on 2 different YouTube pages right now. But I'm getting ready for the Mark of the Beast show, and I hope all of y'all come through and tune into the Mark of the Beast show, which is definitely going to be something real epic that we need right now. And I do feel like they're going to ban my show because of what I'm going to be promoting. And I'm not promoting, but I'm making y'all aware. You know what I'm saying? So shouts to everybody that did stop by, and everybody that tunes into this show. Just know a lot of these artists you're gonna see on the Mark of the Beast show. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, Miss Allison. We got Miss Allison Rowe in the building. Shout out to Brianna Bree in the building. Shout out to Danger. Danger been hanging out with us the whole show. You know what I'm saying? As well as my girl Kayan, and she definitely been in the building with us the whole show. Shouts to y'all. My homie Crisis stopped by. You know, we building up our fan base. Like I said, I've been doing this show for a long time, but I wasn't really on Facebook with it. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm building my show up, you know, different. So if you ask anybody, I had a blog talk show where I was doing exceptionally well on that. And then I had a live stream show, but I wanted a way to combine both of these shows and bring it to Facebook. So shouts to all my Facebook people that shared it, that stopped by, that's hanging out with us right now. This is New Age of Hip Hop and R&B. I don't got the phone lines open right now, but soon you'll have the phone lines open. But I also do have the Facebook where you can go on the camera and you can chat with me. So I'm going to start doing that. And I'll be interviewing a lot of the artists that way. So Danger. Make sure you know, like I said, I'm gonna link up with you and Ron Morris anyway. You know what I'm saying? Y'all gotta be heavy in rotation like Fresh Flow and K Smash is right now. And my man Endo, he about to get in heavy rotation on the show. But I've been working out the bugs. I've been working out the scheduling for the show. So I just need a lot of y'all to support the show. Come through, hang out, share. You know, let people know what's good with the Underworld Squad. We got a video show. We playing all y'all videos and promoting y'all on UTV Raps, and then we got the radio show where y'all can call in and we can really get down and grimy with it, which is Underworld Radio. So make sure y'all like both of the pages. Make sure y'all follow us. Make sure y'all show love. Like I said, Kayana, much love to you because you definitely been holding me down. And like ever since I added her, she's been like, you know what I'm saying? Following the Underworld, supporting the Underworld. So I got to give much love to her. Like I said, my daughters is coming down from Jersey tomorrow to hang out with me in Florida for like a week. So I'm probably not going to do no show. So I'm going to be posting this show up right here for y'all to, you know, keep sharing it, checking it out. You can watch it over and over again. And we just gonna keep going, man. Like I said, I'm gonna go for a little while longer, and we're gonna end the show. But I just had to do that and say shout outs and salutes to everybody that's been tuning in, the people that sent drops for my shows, man. Like so many people sent me drops and you know tracks and you know videos, all type of shit like that. So I got nothing but love for all the people that did that for me. Let's see where we at right now. Let's get back into some music though. New Age of Hip Hop style. It's your boy Stiggity o.stylez. Let's go. What's up, Queen B? How you been? Much love.
o.stylez, yeah, special up to you too. Queen Bean, and I mean that. Call you a king bean for whatever struggle you have been through. You a king for that.
It's my girl, Queen B.
You made it to tell your story, to pass that message, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I know, bro.
It's true.
Okay.
Believe that. It's true. It's not a game. It's not a game. When you do all your bullshit, keep your ass at home like me. So when you get fucked up, you fall asleep in your bed and wake up like a nigga.
You be tripping.
Your ass better be home too. You heard what I said.
Exclusive on coasttocoastmixtapes.com.
Oh yeah, get it. Woo. Get it. Gino. Y'all baby. Hey, I know they can see me up ghost. I know they can see me up ghost. My bitch get the bop with your big, and we get the bop Billy Ghost. Whoa. I know they can see me up ghost. 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 My bitch get the bop with your big, and we get the bop Billy Ghost. Whoa. I know they can see me up ghost. I know they can see me up ghost. I know they can see me up ghost. Yeah. Get it. Nigga trying back this house now. Yo, this for you. I'm mad with it. Woo. Ran through the yard with my nigga full of BS. Fuck it up, get it back. Nigga, that's a reflex. I was teaching niggas fucking reset. I was on the corner with the deflex. I ain't for the BS. I'ma get my team right, PS. I'ma put the fame on the line. These niggas rich about they bro. I'm allowed to be dope. I remember Bollies on that coke. I had to get it. I know they can see me up ghost. I know they can see me up ghost. My bitch get the bop with your big, and we get the bop Billy Ghost. Whoa. I know they can see me up ghost. 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 My bitch get the bop with your big, and we get the bop Billy Ghost. Whoa. I know they can see me up ghost. 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 I'm getting that bread at a low. I'm a lie to the judge of the oath. I'm that shit that you put in your nose. We them niggas bring us to a shows. I'm that nigga gun under his clothes. Red and blue pill. Nigga, I'm popping them both. I'ma empty this clip out that boat. I'll be outside your bushes like most. I'ma turn on the news for results. Black hoodies on like a coat. I'ma rip off her clothes like the Hulk. I'ma fire this shit, watch it joke. I'ma fuck on her friend while she walk. To tell that bitch it was my fault. I know they can see me up ghost. I know they can see me up ghost. My bitch get the bop with your big, and we get the bop Billy Ghost. Whoa. I know they can see me up ghost. 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 My bitch get the bop with your big, and we get the bop Billy Ghost. Whoa. I know they can see me up ghost. I know they can see me up ghost. I know they can see me up ghost.
Haters wanna see me fail, bitches wanna see me lose. My ex nigga want me back, had to cut that nigga loose. I'm so focused now, homie, ain't no stopping me. I got him on some shook ones, Mark deep. I killed that quiet storm, yeah, silently. I'm not Nicki, I'm not Rim, I'm not Cardi B. I'm not Fox, I'm not Kim, just a new MC. So when y'all mention female rappers, that's including me. I'm like Nana with a microscope, you can't see. But I will manage just like Adams, and I'm not Eve. I'm Albert Einstein with these prophecies. Martin Luther King having all his dreams. I foresee a lot, do y'all copy me? I'm foreseeing motherfuckers not stopping me. I break the shit down scientifically. And I don't make statements, my lawyers speak. So fuck your evidence, I don't cop the pleas. And I don't need a hook, let me ride the beat. I'm walking with my heels on the
off the water, could I tread on tap?
They put the pressure on me and it made them diamond. I know my time is near, that's why I'm still grinding. We may be talking greatest, maybe talking greatest. I heard you had some words for me, let me demonstrate it. I'm really that real, I'm really from the Ville. I still love the smell of bullet shells, let me chill. See how Brooklyn made me, her life is crazy. I'm just trying to make my son $1 million, baby. You know I got that slick talk, that slick talk. I'm in the major leagues with the big dogs. Niggas can't fuck with me, not at all. I'm a pit on this beat with locked jugs. With locked jugs. With locked jugs. I'm a pit on this beat with locked jugs.
Look at you and look at me. Look at me and look at you. Niggas in the back trying to still catch up to the level that I took it to. Say a lot for the niggas in the back. One time we can do it like electric boogaloo. We can do it for the niggas in the track with the pack, real rap, cause you know how a nigga do. Look at you and look at me. Look at me and look at you. Niggas in the back trying to still catch up to the level that I took it to. Say a lot for the niggas in the back. One time we can do it like electric boogaloo. We can do it for the niggas in the track with the pack, real rap, cause you know how a nigga do. Time and time again, I'ma give 195%. Whenever I decide to vent, getting sucked off right behind the tent. I got a call in a couple shot percent. Rub an extendo, popping in. You niggas faking, I will not pretend. Rub a ballpoint pen, the document. Now, okay, where do I begin? Wait a minute, your oxygen. Man, I never got the ring like Opposite. If a bitch act up, pop a front. Loot game, everything is top again. Tryna stack more chips to IBM. If you see Hawk smash, it's probably him. Bitch got the chun-li with the bop pen. If it ain't Blue Phil's, not the trend. Man, it's way too much toxicant. Never tried cocaine, it's a box of 10. Throw 100 like a George Washington. White Jim when you came to try your chin. I'ma fuck around and catch you 5 to 10. With the cowboy boots and slide it in. If it take one look, it's common sense. It's common sense. Look at you and look at me. Look at me and look at you. Niggas in the back trying to still catch up to the level that I took it to. Say a lot for the niggas in the back. One time we can do it like electric boogaloo. We can do it for the niggas in the track with the pack, real rap, cause you know how a nigga do. Look at you and look at me. Look at me and look at you. Niggas in the back trying to still catch up to the level that I took it to. Say a lot for the niggas in the back. One time we can do it like electric boogaloo. We can do it for the niggas in the track with the pack, real rap, cause you know how a nigga do. I feel a vibe till my driver bust you. Roll up and I take a puff or two. Oh man, if you mad to bust a move. And you wonder why I hold them fuck with you. Never wait for a prostitute to choose. Got a game plan that you won't refuse. They be like, goddamn, what Neston did. I be like, goddamn, what don't I do? They gon' do it why? Cause I told them to. My phone poppin', the bill is overdue. You can take it from a kid that broke the rules. I tell these young boys chill, go to school. I got my wrists on chill like frozen food. Got a real bad bitch to hold the pool. Let my Jew boy customize the cars. He gon' take an antique from old to new. Look at you and look at me. Look at me and look at you. Niggas in the back trying to still catch up to the level that I took it to. Say a lot for the niggas in the back. One time we can do it like electric boogaloo. We can do it for the niggas in the track with the pack, real rap, cause you know how a nigga do. Look at you and look at me. Look at me and look at you. Niggas in the back trying to still catch up to the level that I took it to. Yeah, say a lot for the niggas in the back. One time we can do it like electric boogaloo. We can do it for the niggas in the track with the pack, real rap, cause you know how a nigga do. Know how a nigga do. Wonder.
IDGAF when they play this song. Sing along, push cologne. Make your missus ass what kind of string you on. Fucking fine, know all these niggas, they just throw a name on strong. Just that dizzy dope, that fizzy flow, like who you gaming on. I done been around like equator, shit got deep like voice of Darth Vader. Tryna make a wish as a stars, boy, everything I wanted since Sega. Saga started, I got retarded on every ball and shot classic coasters. But my young boy had the white back against the wall like them taxi posters. Now I just recorded on a program, in a mix like a slow jam. Got a nigga bopping like a toe jam. Hope you feel up on it with the slow dance. Think I'm Romeo, she tryna roll, man. See you anywhere I'm tryna hold, man. This ain't half time, I don't show bands, and you know, man. I don't give a fuck. When it comes down to the bullshit they airing, we don't want no more. When it comes down to it, with the ones they can't pay, can't lie, cause they know. We lie, we lit, we so gone, they can't take no more. IDGAF, that's the stage left, that's when they play the song. When it comes down to the bullshit they airing, we don't want no more. When it comes down to it, with the ones they can't pay, can't lie, cause they know. We lie, lit, we so gone, they can't take no more. IDGAF, that's the stage left, that's when they play the song.
I'm live in the kitchen, whipping the work, pitching the heat. Rush automatic, I rock on the sleep. It's footed below in the streets, cold in the cooler. Ice your medulla, Ricky the ruler, I'm slick. Brain in the whip, quizzing your bitch, you go dummy on dick. Retarded the shit, tsunami, I'm lit. Wavy, I'm wavy, jock in the drip. Glock on me kick, 808 boom in your think. trigger, empty the clip, speed through the city, Lego the click, snapping, connecting the dots, atomically bombing the spot, hotter than lava, higher dimension, a boy in your privilege, lights with the vision, dividing and splitting the sea, astrology over your head, I'm doper than opium mans, reviving the dead, heard you was sick, here take a fix of the boy, I'm banging the tent, say hello to my friend, acting you wanna get shanked with a pen, look at them choke, I ain't giving a fuck, we trying to get paid, in love with the guap, give me a rollie and Mikey shoot.
When it comes down to the bullshit they airing, we don't want no more. When it comes down to it, we the ones they can't fake it like this, they know. We lie, we so gone and they can't take no more. IDGAFX is stage left, that's when they play the song. When it comes down to the bullshit they airing, we don't want no more. When it comes down to it, we the ones they can't fake it like this, they know. We lie, we so gone and they can't take no more. IDGAFX is stage left, that's when they play the song.
Something in your ear and tell you something sweet that you wanna hear. Or would you mind if I laid you down and kiss on you and do all the freaky things you want me to? Could you believe I can feel all your fantasies? So close your eyes and take my hand, come to me. Girl, there's no question I can give you everything you need, mentally, emotionally, and sexually. It's gonna be under the covers, girl, we grinding slowly, doing all the things that you want me to do to you. It's gonna be you, and me. Under the covers, girl, we grinding slowly, doing all the things that you want me to do to you. Girl, I know that I will always stay true. No need to look no further, I'm in front of you. How would you like it if I spend it all on you? Shopping sprees and diamond rings, it's all brand new. And don't you worry about your shorties, cause I got them too. Yes, I will be the kind of father that they never knew. It's gonna be you. It's gonna be you. It's gonna be you, and me. Under the covers, girl, we grinding slowly, doing all the things that you want me to do to you. It's gonna be you, and me. Under the covers, girl, we grinding slowly, doing all the things that you want me to do to you.
Show the world what I made of. Best of the best, yes. Even when I'm at my worst, killing time, killing every beat, killing every rhyme, killing every line. Diverse. I'm a star when I spit these bars. I go so hard, I hate leaving. Praise God that I'm on my job, cause I be in the eyes and I break even. Wanna feel but don't feel my hunger. Ice grill wanna steal my thunder. Tryna rain on my parade, but operating your rain with a big umbrella. Ella. When you wanna cause pain to somebody, doing things that you wanna be a part of. But you can't, so you raving, you ran at any given chance instead of working harder. I being smarter. Yeah, I'm staying in my lane, doing my thing and trying to break through. Yeah, I'm changing the game, but I'm staying the same. When you was hitting, I didn't hate you. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and they want some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and they want some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine. I take it and run with it, that's how I ball. Hogging these shots, that's what I call. Going Kobe, y'all. Yeah, I'm driving in the lane, beat. Now I can stand the rain, he hard. When they see me fall, but you see me leaving y'all in the dust. Cost me the cuss. The regulator dropped the bomb and on the detonator. Going up the escalator, dropped the bomb and y'all are hella haters. When fall came and y'all knew it, blew it. Talk big dreams, but you still didn't do it. I believe you can achieve it, but if you really mean it, then you live and breathe it. So then I believe it when I see it. You watch things happen, great things happen. You wonder what happened, I made things happen. I'm the head of the street fan, running with deep best. You the end of the week, man, WTF. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and they want some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and they want some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you. Round and around, you be turning me, inspiring me, it burns in me to do a big for eternity. But ain't no hurting me, and no diverting me from my goals and aspirations. Negative thoughts out the mind, concentration. Focus, man, on my future success. Good brothers all vexed and distressed by the skills of the steps. What a mess, I confess. I wanna be a model, of course I'm a scholar. Entrepreneur, your father, pocket more of my daughters. Watch it about it with the thought of a demise. They try to bring me down, but still I arise, recognize. Stacking up chips to go wide, surprise. Got a gleam in my eyes, me a dollar genie realize. Right, but both my sons now on the run, just to be second to none to number one. If you get mad, I don't care. Stay down in the barrel that y'all crap share. Kiss the dairy air of an MC square. Debonair, legendary scorer like Jordan in the air. Yeah, everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and they want some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine. Everybody crying, but they come for the big time. Don't wanna grind, and they want some of this shine. Barely got a dime, every some of them is fine. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get mine.
Coast to coast, the new age of hip hop, pop. The new age of hip hop, pop.
What is this? What is this? This is a production.
Straight to the end, always finishing strong. He takes me to the moon and back. He's like illegal drugs, or he's my crack. He just gives my ass a smack. I know it's something that's a rare. No old niggas can ever come back. He penetrates me, he brings me to my knees. The feeling such a squeeze. Oh baby, baby, please, oh yeah. He penetrates me, he gives his all to me. The kryptonite I need. Oh baby, baby, please, oh yeah.
Coast to coast.
This your boy DJ JFK up in here in the Priority Artist Mix CD. We about to definitely go hard. These are the artists that you will hear in rotation on our shows, UTV Raps, Underworld Radio, all promotion going through from the Underworld television scene, Underworld movement. It's your boy DJ JFK. We about to get into these priority artists. Much love and respect to all the priority artists that's on the CD and on the next one and the next one. You know how we do. We gonna keep it going. Let's get into this CD, man. Priority artists.
Coast to coast mixtapes.com.
A dope beat and a dope bitch. For sure, a dope house and a dope whip. I got it from the kitchen with the chicken flip. It's done like every time when I leak the spit. You run from 16s like it's the big fifth. No doubt, cause that's the sugar that you dealing with. Arm, leg, arm, head, right here 100%. Stand on the build, on the drop, on the heavy edge. Before it starts, collect the bag, don't it make sense? If not, it don't add up.
then I'm excellent. Pay me for mine's professional excellence. High grade to the levels you never seen this shit. Invisible sets and Corvettes, I ain't get it yet. When the time come, you can have it. I'm about to check. Made this great, ain't cost me much but a pawn. The bomb threat with Semtex and napalm. Nigga, music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. A notebook and some quiet time. No doubt a loud pack and some tracks divine. My bag, I'm all in it. You can feel the lines. It's words when I spill it. It's my lifetime. You dudes pay a lot for the lights line. Myself, I'm in the back with the real grind. Like fuck it, you's a savage and you love swine. Scattered tats to veggies so you running high. Behind your mumble rap, auto-tune rhymes. It's love, do your thing, I'ma grab mines. For sure, 25-8 as I climb. Some hate is all facts, dumb, deaf and blind. I'm humble when I network intertwine. I travel, move state to state through them lines. For lawyers to see the kid, they hold the scat sign. It's Digi, a bomb threat, Semtex and napalm. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. A big loft, sit back, recline. Okay, I do my thing, you damn right, it's mine. I come from a spot, you gotta blow the grind. Stay low, out the way before the page is fine. It's that simple, the wave crime. Reality rap now since the past time. Under the sun, there's nothing new to life ride. Fuck out of here, family first is how we rise. Without music, I'm throwed off of real lies. It's like I need my meds from the doc prescribed. Samples and loops, boom, bad biz my high. Hold up, you do you, I'm at the finish line. I'm focused up, out of sight, out of mind. Get into it, the agriculture diamond shine. New project, release be the 5th time. Hey yo, a bomb threat, Semtex and napalm. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine. Music be my medicine. This is what I need. Music be my medicine.
The new age in hip hop, pop, pop.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Got a problem with paranoia. Keep a problem in the foyer. Speed dial on my lawyer. Senile, I never saw you. Meanwhile, I gotta keep it vertical. Hating niggas, Sean and Irvin, you a pat on the back. Now they burping you, bagging hand. When I arrive in the terminal, half now, other half wheels down. M in the W, how that feel now? I don't know, I ain't got it yet. Had to have it like an army vet. A lot of gas like Denali get. I'm in these streets like a trolley wreck. No flash on me, I'm low key. Got a passport from 01. Spending cash since last week. That stunting shit ain't no fun. Now I know my purpose. Now I'm at my furthest. Now they getting nervous. Gotta pay for my service. Hey, glitter, glitter, glitter. It ain't all glitter. You see diamonds in the picture. I see a whole gang of hitters. But I see glitter, glitter, glitter. It ain't all glitter. You see diamonds in the picture. I see a whole gang of hitters. I've been told you it's game on. Red beam, but you ain't wrong. Sound like it's the same song. That fake shit, watch Akon. No shade with shades on. At your door like Avon. Handful of my day ones. On top of beef like A1. Yeah, I know what the struggle like. You can getting heat from the oven like. Same grub from the other night. Sleeping coats for the covers right. Glitter, 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 nigga. You don't know the half, nigga. Living on the
my ass, nigga.
What?
Now they going back to my old shit.
Hey.
Trying to get a rap from my old bitch.
Hey.
Is he a felon or he sold shit?
Yeah.
Do we got a house on both wrists?
What?
Making a change like sofas. Couple Belvy now rollers. Securing the bag like Otis. Feeling the weight on my shoulders.
Hey.
Y'all spend a lot of time trying to shine, but can't rap. Frontin' like the game's great, and you know it ain't that. Tuck your shit in slow motion. Tuck your shit in slow motion. You wanna have frontin' holding that bag, and they got a hating nigga hungry to carry.
Glitter, 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 glitter. It ain't all glitter. You see diamonds in the picture. I see a whole gang of hitters, but I see glitter, 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 glitter. It ain't all glitter. You see diamonds in the picture. I see a whole gang of hitters. Glitter, 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 glitter. It ain't all glitter. You see diamonds in the picture. I see a whole gang of hitters, but I see glitter, 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 glitter. It ain't all glitter. You see diamonds in the picture. I see a whole gang of hitters.
Make a wise lady from a crybaby, or change Slim Jim to Slim Shady, or maybe I could hold the world in the palm of my own hand, a land of the no man, be dipping in the river. I could make a snowman shiver, I'm so chill, get any freeze ice with my skill, making glass shatter. I can use my mind over matter. I can make the fattest man get even fatter. I can make the sun turn blue, and everything Roy could do up in the ring, I could do it to you, and it is true. I can make a whole G from a Q. I can't even give that DJ clue and make your dreams come true. I can see through the shadows of the night and make a ton feel like it's light as a kite. Word life, I can make the limelight bright enough for the blind to get sight beyond sight. I could change a village in a tinsel town. I could take a sumo wrestler pound for pound, the world renowned. Sound of my flows get down. I can make it rain all year round. I can do all things, I can do all things that the whole world brings. And with the king on my side, day and night, I got to swallow my pride and let God's light shine very bright in my life. I tell you which crew has got my back. I can do all things as my spirit's intact. I got the Lord of hosts on my side, day and night. Don't you hear it? The angels, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. To the break of dawn, and the line I be rhyming on. I can transform the day into a quiet storm, and I can start a fire with a fountain on the lawn. Or win a game of chess with just a king and a pawn. Even if I'm locked in chains, it can arrange for this whole thing to change from death row to lover's lane. Yo, don't you know I could flow from here to there? I could turn a bum off the street to a mayor. So you asking for civil action and satisfaction? I could resurrect and put the black back of Michael Jackson. I could do all the impossible, like take songs from Marilyn Manson and make them sing gospel. If there's any barrier, I can break through it. I could do anything if I put my mind to it. You can do anything if you put your mind to it, and we can do anything if we put our minds to it. I can do all things, I can do all things that the whole world brings. And with the king on my side, day and night, I got to swallow my pride and let God's light shine very bright in my life. I tell you which crew has got my back. I can do all things as my spirit's intact. I got the Lord of hosts on my side, day and night. Don't you hear it? The angels, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
You got on the hair. What's up, Ma? How you been?
You be looking ass, nigga.
You crazy, man. You wild.
I get caught all kind of shit with my goddamn ass. Bad boy style. I do me. That's what
I know you do you.
What you do though is how you go around.
You know what I do. Stop playing gun and flipping out every time, yeah.
I can motherfucking meet dickhead.
Oh, you trip. Much love.
Underworld. Hip hop.
Let's go.
fire. Middle of winter, lifted it from the ground and wiped the dirt from my reflection. I was noticing it's transparent like my past is present. Now can you picture this picture without a frame or a filter? Commenting likes from the likes of those. Let it know when you strike a pose. With a photo that's in your phone that controls every moment. No, you make a move. We are pawns on a checkerboard. I see through like a clairvoyant through a portal or a call of my endurance. I've endured it, all the pain and all the strain. All the same, it's all a game. Got us on the ball and chain. Wonder why we bought for chains. I see through like a pair of bifocals on Benjamin. Band a cover Benjamins. Telescope on deck, I can see the space that I deserve to begin. This journey, boy. Who'd ever thought it was a Jersey boy? Cause I got the feeling that I ain't beginning to fit into where I fit into what's real. Do you know that? Nigga, feel it, what's real? Let me show you. Yeah, answer me that, what's real? Yeah, what's real? Let me show you. $100 million, all I wanted. $100 million, $100 million, all I ever wanted.
Yeah, no doubt. Power now, the power now. Yeah, the power now, the power now. Yeah. No.
Underworld.
When it is. Yeah. No doubt.
Underworld.
Power now, the power now. Yeah, the power now, the power now. Yeah. Can't trust a soul when you out there on the road. The season changed, but the world remains cold. Shot to the head, the Mom Dukes is a body blow. The facts of life like Nell Carter and Scatto. Jewels never sold on the antique roadshow. Keep it in the family for years to come in, the value grow. Mine is well up the ante, put it on extra glow. Not gonna turn it down, small fry, hell no. Respect the game is how you get it back for show. I'm a lyric icon, you be the average Joe. Trapped on the corner getting pennies and silvers for dough. Really in investments, big trips and bungalows. It's all part of the plan, it drops like dominoes. Niggas that be moving on other shit, let them go. Graduated twice from the bullshit, professional. Graduated twice from the bullshit, professional. Put 10 on it, nigga, this is flaming hot. Put 10 on it, nigga, you bout to lose your spot. Put 10 on it, nigga, this is flaming hot. Put 10 on it, nigga, you bout to lose your spot. Put 10 on it, nigga, this is flaming hot. Put 10 on it, nigga, you bout to lose your spot. Put 10 on it, put 10 on it, put 10 on it. Hey yo, you either getting chicken or you broke, that's what it is. This shit been going on since niggas was little kids. So get your mind right at a young age. To own your beds, get on live about some shit you never did. Ever had a pot to piss in still, that's how you live. Knock off chains and you the top nig. Me, I'm in the soup kitchen cooking, trying to earn a gig. Work for mine from off the corner so you can keep the gigs. Niggas wanted me for dead, had to stay positive. Talk about no success shit, that's sugarish. Prissy poop, makeup bag dudes, you extra tricks. Me, I'm from the cloth at the round table, you make no sense. Won't get stuck fucking with her, that's some other shit. Get it on with the vocab, now watch me ice the wrist. But we can get into, watch me stack them grips. But we can get into, watch me stack them grips. Put 10 on it, nigga, this is flaming hot. Put 10 on it, nigga, you bout to lose your spot. Put 10 on it, nigga, this is flaming hot. Put 10 on it, nigga, you bout to lose your spot. Put 10 on it, nigga, this is flaming hot. Put 10 on it, nigga, you bout to lose your spot. Put 10 on it, put 10 on it, put 10 on it. Hey yo. Yeah.
York, yo, shouts out to, you know what I'm saying, Underworld, UTV Raps, you know what I'm saying, my nigga o.stylez, you know what I'm saying, respect. Scatter RP, you know what I'm saying, when I'm watching and listening, that's what I'm listening to, Underworld, UTV Raps, you know what I'm saying. o.stylez, what up, brother?
We got smoke to give and we give it for free. Bags in and they in for the cheap. I ain't finna lay out with no freak. I'm hitting that hoe and I leave. Street nigga, I'm pulling out weeds. Fuck at the gang, they was sleeping on me. Block 19, I keep it on me. Reach at me wrong and we put him to sleep. Get him out of here. We round wise in the Jeep. Me, Glock, Ron, and Reek. I'm fucking up back ends at the mall. I'm spending racks on sneaks. Knock him off the map, delete. Can't have a feast, I tell him to eat. I'm on my way and I ain't reached the peak. That little nigga hot like Texas Pete. Hot. I make your salary every week. I'm in the hills, Beverly. She wanna fuck, let's schedule it. I have a hoe wanna marry me. He say he want smoke, we bury him. Gang on my back, let him. Yeah, these niggas cat like fairy tale. Bitch, I'm good everywhere.
Fuck what you thought, we got big guns. Ride with that Glock, no cap gun. Put that to your head if you owe some. Then pull up on Stunner and smoke one. I got a plug if you need one, cause my niggas moving the whole boat. I got a bitch in a Nissan, I'm finna fuck up that whole throat. Niggas won't smoke, then I'm bringing the chimney. Don't know gymnastics, but might used to send me. This clip extended with alternate endings. Run up a check, I don't never get winded. Niggas can't see me, the windows is tinted. Scoop up your bitch in the motherfucking building. You out of line and I'll put you back in it. I bought a strap just to match with the Fendi.
We got smoke to give and we give it for free. Bags in and they in for the cheap. I ain't finna lay out with no freak. I'm hitting that hoe and I leave. Street nigga, I'm pulling out weeds. Fuck at the gang, they was sleeping on me. Block 19, I keep it on me. Reach at me wrong and we put him to sleep. Get him out of here. We got smoke to give and we give it for free. Bags in and they in for the cheap. I ain't finna lay out with no freak. I'm hitting that hoe and I leave. Street nigga, I'm pulling out weeds. Fuck at the gang, they was sleeping on me. Block 19, I keep it on me. Reach at me wrong and we put him to sleep. Get him out of here.
Packs coming in from the west side while I'm beating your bitch from the backside. I tell her open the mouth wide, she take a hit like the front line. Put him to sleep, it's bedtime. That chopper sing nothing but lullabies. Real nigga, I'm not the mother guy. I fuck a bitch out of panty line. I want that head, cat scan. She let me fuck, no lap dance. That pussy tight like a wristband. Pass that to my nigga like Steve Nash. I'm fucking bitches in Calabasas. Mail back to work, can't forget your package. Got it for 12, sell it for 21. Ooh, y'all niggas savage.
We got smoke to give and we give it for free. Bags in and they in for the cheap. I ain't finna lay out with no freak. I'm hitting that hoe and I leave. Street nigga, I'm pulling out weeds. Fuck at the gang, they was sleeping on me. Block 19, I keep it on me. Reach at me wrong and we put him to sleep. Get him out of here. We got smoke to give and we give it for free. Bags in and they in for the cheap. I ain't finna lay out with no freak. I'm hitting that hoe and I leave. Street nigga, I'm pulling out weeds. Fuck at the gang, they was sleeping on me. Block 19, I keep it on me. Reach at me wrong and we put him to sleep. Get him out of here.
Word of mouth. Got a stupid nigga smacked a couple whack without a doubt. Getting money on my route, low key. You know my stilo. Work what you need. I'm giving fixes to people. On tour my ego. Stay away from the Eagles. Henny got me bolded. Taking shots like they free throws. Flop like an eagle. Load my talents an eagle. I want my quarterback, so I'm chasing range like an eagle. So here we go. Let me talk to the people. Life is like a movie, meaning death is the sequel. Shooting like the Regal. Theaters to help you preview the future of our people. Hope Elijah can see through. You better open eyes before that martial law rise at your front door. Now 8Ks to your eyes. Really you a guard snake trying to play the cobra tie. Riding when the grass is so you see the black mamba eyes. Body bags everywhere, the hood is in the drought. Trying to see who get it in so we can take them niggas out. Bricks in the book bag, money on the couch. Let them niggas run in here, I bet nobody make it out.
Underworld.
The new age of hip hop.
Sometimes you just gotta sit back, watch and listen, get a full understanding of things, you know? You didn't want me seeing brighter days, and only wanted me to lose my way. And all them jealous thoughts that you displayed, listen, I seen it coming from a mile away. Plotted on me, trapped me in your maze, but it was nothing for me to find my way. I was prepared for this since 20 days, nigga. I seen it coming from a mile away. Brightest day, I done read your mind, your thoughts. I saw the signs, describe me, motherfucker. Couldn't wait to catch a nigga blind. All of your intentions was to knock my hustle. Pull the pistol on me, leave the scene with all my bundles. I seen it coming so vivid.
I seen it coming from a mile away. I seen it coming from a mile away.
I seen it coming from a mile away.
I seen it coming from a mile away. Oh, I seen it coming from a mile away.
I seen it coming from a mile away.
I seen it coming from a mile away. From a mile away.
In my soul, in my guts. Folk and in your life, they don't care how they hurt you. Say you a dream, get it going to murk you. Dog eat dog, real guessing ain't personal. Shit goes so left, ain't irreversible. Hold up, motherfuckers never wanted me to blow up. Saw coming, they was prepping me for bad news. I was ready, preparating, played it so smooth. You had no clue, holla back cool, then I'm back cool. Looking brand new, fresh on them. Somebody hurt, somebody mad, huh? Thought I didn't know I was close to a downfall. Thought I wasn't taking it home with a ground ball. How long will this go on? Faking, prolong, acting like you got love for me. Acting, trying to get close to me. Acting like you don't know.
I seen it coming from a mile away. I seen it coming from a mile away. I seen it coming from a mile away. Oh, I seen it coming from a mile away. I seen it coming from a mile away. Seen it coming from a mile away.
Shout out to everybody in the whole world, because we represent the underworld. UTV Raps, o.stylez, what's good, my brother? This is Commotion representing Fresh Flow. You know how we do, man.
Now we got my man Q-Mo.
What's good, what's good?
Hood Superhero about to drop, bro.
Yeah, man, part 3, man. I'm excited for it.
You've been working hard.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time coming. I finished all my my obligations to the global rap revolution. So that project's going to be dropping too.
Shout out to the squad.
Shout out to Knights Roundtable Ciphers. You know, we finished a lot of the projects with, you know, Fresh Flow ENT. So even once my album drops, we'll have we'll even have another mixtape after that dropping, because we have stuff that didn't make the first mixtape or the second album that, you know, we can still put out. So
and where can they find those joints too?
Yeah, man, pretty much anywhere you can find your music. So Tidal, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Reverb Nation. You know, you can either find Fresh Flow projects or projects from some of the individual members in Fresh Flow. You know, we be out there, man.
You know what it is, your boy Stiggity o.stylez, chilling with my man Q-Mo, Commotion, Fresh Flow in the building. I know you do a lot of work with
Fresh Flow. Listen. Niggas never gave me shit, I scream fuck 'em. Try to play a low-key nigga but never duck 'em. Talk behind your back to your face, they sayin' nothing. Here's your application, bitch niggas check off frontin'. Plus when you down, them fools they never round. But a wise man once said even the circus got clowns. So I'ma do what I do with the flow to the fresh, with the E to the nest, staying fresh to my death. Niggas love to see you down and out for the count. Hey, when a nigga go to 12 rounds, application denied. Friend to respond, my application
application is for murder. I see that you checked out. You won't make it to the interview. Better yet, the sitting room. Stupid motherfucker, can't you see what I am getting to? Your act is trash. Your shit is played. Next time you fill it out, nigga, send a resume.
I got a haters application, you should fill it out. Once you apply, then you approve, you can chill it out. I grab a Pyrex pot and whip a skillet out. You withholding info, I make you spill it out. So many hoes caught the vapors on Judgment Day. And niggas try and count the money I got tucked away. If I pop another bottle, I need double let. So I can give a rat's ass with a sucker set. You guilty by association, you should fill it out. Niggas shoot so many bricks, they could build a house. They should bury all informers, let the killers out. Legal with blind to write rhymes, you can fill it out. I'm with the Fresh Flow gang on 54th Street. I met him at the Cav game, it was floor seats. The west side of Washington up the northeast. We turning all you cornballs into corned beef.
You need a haters application.
You should fill it out.
And cuffing fees and registration.
You should fill it out.
And when you want the real plays in the field, what's the deal? Got an expert in the pill.
You should fill it out.
You need some numbers for your show.
You should fill it out.
Your funds are coming kinda slow.
You should fill it out.
And for the thirsty heads who gon' turn their heads, you wanna know what the survey says.
You should fill it out.
Sneaker King on deck, moves are being made, connected with Ines. Car go down the highway. Exit 7-8, phone posit King, hologram how I play. Mr. Bacon on deck, doing it my way. Fresh with the flow, Gil Buster all day. Black entrepreneurs got the haters saute. Red carpet SK, that's how they walk May. Trenton in the building, F day off May. Hustle hard, black bottle boys, epic movie. Black models at the W, bubble jacuzzi. Shining on these ducks, soft as a smoothie. Money getter since Bill Cosby wearing the Coogee. Whack niggas make me unruly. Nah, we ain't cool, you fake pops ain't raised no fool. I've been on my grind, destined to receive what's mine. Violate if you cross that line, Christopher Reeve your spine. Smoking on that fine, straight island vine. Test me, you must be out of your mind. Make it hard for you day and night time. Nighttime.
You out of fresh hot lock nest?
Bring the dealers out.
Promo for the go-go to the ho-go.
You can fill it out.
You can't deny we the realest out when we chillin' out.
You need a permit for the flow.
You should fill it out.
I've been a student of the game, learned some lessons there. Wanna know my thoughts, dude? I've been filled out the questionnaire. Worked at MTV, BET.
How you getting there?
Putty tat haters get testy.
Couldn't get a pair.
Top floor of Hollywood stores, yeah, it's a mess in there. Fresh flow and that's no this game, it ain't never fair. Rappers running out of they life savings to come inside. Gotta act,
Fill it out, right?
we are the ones denied. Sneak this or being wagon, now you wanna ride. Money wise, all funny guys, yoked up sunny side. Your funds are dry, you always asking for help with it. Can't check the man in the mirror using a selfie stick. I never doubt what you really bout in the interview. When in a drought, how you deal reveals the inner you. 360 deal is out, went to indie route, so fresh flow for hiring
You should fill it out.
You need a haters application.
You should fill it out.
And cuffing fees and registration.
You should fill it out.
And when you want the real plays in the field, what's the deal? Got an expert in the pill.
You should fill it out.
You need some numbers for your show.
You should fill it out.
Your funds are coming kinda slow.
You should fill it out.
And for the thirsty heads who gon' turn their heads, you wanna know what the survey says.
Fill it out. Fill it out.
Definitely a lovely show, epic show. I love the show. We about to take it out like that. Shouts to my homie Q Motion, Fresh Flow. Definitely about to drop that hood superhero, which is definitely about to be another epic joint for the underground. Shout out to the whole Fresh Flow ENT. Shout out to my homie Danger. He hung out with me the whole show. Much love to the brother. I know he's doing big things. He got a lot of big things going on right now. Shouts to everybody that's been stopping through, man. This has been lovely, man. Shout out to Tanisha Keaton just joined the movement. You know what I'm saying? Shouts to you for stopping through. We definitely going to be going there. Make sure y'all check us whenever we on. Follow us. Like and share the show. Do all that good shit because this is a movement right now. A lot of people like and share the show today. Like I was just now saying, I'm about to post up before we take the show out. Certain sites. I ain't really going to name too many, but mainly the one I'm on right now that I'm majorly on. Usually deletes the archives of these shows. I don't know why they do it, but they usually delete the archives. So I'm going to be posting the YouTube version of it up here. Make sure y'all follow me on YouTube. Like I said, the page I'm on YouTube is strictly for UTV station shows, and I just started it up, so I don't have a lot of subscribers on there right now. So definitely follow us on that one. Follow us on Underground ENT, which is my official Underworld page, Underground ENT. You can also go to undergroundentertainment.bandcamp.com and visit our music CD store. Undergroundentertainment.bandcamp.com. That's the site. If you look on the back, you can see that's my logo for my mobile CD store. If you catch me out in the streets, I got the mobile CD store where you could download CDs right to your phone, tablet, laptop, whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? Right then and there. So we doing it up like that. It's Underworld all day, every day. Shout out to my brother, my technician, my homie. Crisis was coming through, and we're gonna keep going like that, man. New Age of Hip Hop Style. I'm out of here. o.stylez. JFK.